Good evening. I will call this meeting to order. For attendance, we have all trustees, including our student trustees, in the room tonight. We have previously approved the agenda, and we have been to private session. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for this part of the meeting? Seeing none. We do have one item coming forward from a private session. Trustee Burgess, as the chair of that committee.
Yes, this is item F1. It's of a personal nature, Madam Chair. So if you, Trustee Hatfield can put that on the floor. Support by Trustee, oh my goodness, Zipcar, good Lord. Okay, there's no discussion on this matter. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I have a mover to approve the minutes, please? Trustee Olmsted, seconded by Trustee Leclerc. Any comments, questions, amendments? Trustee Chin?
Thank you. Is that about minutes?
Yes, we're on approval of the minutes.
Oh, okay. And on page 7, item 9, and the last sentence, a motion on the same topic can be brought forward as long as the intent is different, as long as the content is different, as far as I remember. You mentioned as long as the content is different, not intent.
So
Okay.
thank you. So I don't recall the exact words that I used. However, that was the intent of my message. So
The word intent?
right, the word in the word intent was my intent. So it can't be what I was communicating at that time is that it can't be basically the same motion reworded. It can be in the same type of area, but the intent behind the motion must be different. However, I do have an update on that under business arising from the minutes as well.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I talked with you even after the meeting, and at least twice. And I believe you said the content, as long as I make some changes to the content, is okay. That's what I remember, and I believe I do remember correctly. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything else on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in support of the minutes as presented. Any opposed? One opposed. That carries. Thank you. We are now at business arising from the minutes. Does anyone have anything coming forward under business arising other than me? Okay, so under business arising from the minutes, I wanted to actually speak to the point that Trustee Chin just brought up, actually. So the comment that I had made at the last meeting on October 15th is actually not really correct. So the minutes do capture what I said. Chairperson Sartori noted that when a motion is decided in the negative, no motion to reconsider can be considered during the next 12 months. And including the previous sentence, Trustee Chin requested clarification on the period of time before a motion can be brought back to the board after it was defeated. So our bylaws, actually, when we reviewed them earlier in 2018, we removed that. And so there actually isn't a time period that's specified in our bylaws currently. And so I am bringing that correction forward as business arising from the minutes. Any questions on that? Trustee Leclerc.
So just out of curiosity, I thought that when somebody brought forward a motion, if it was defeated, that it could only come back by a majority, if somebody who was on the supportive prevailing side brought it forward with a 2/3 majority. Am I not correct in that, if it's the exact same motion?
So to bring back a motion that was previously defeated, we will check on that. I think trustee Burgess is checking that right now. Yep.
In our
So I-
bylaws, it's appendix 4, motion to reconsider. No order of precedence, you need a seconder, it depends on the debate, you can't amend it, and it's a majority vote to reconsider.
Yep. And trustee Halberstadt?
Yeah, could you just enunciate again what you said earlier? It sounded like you can bring it back at any time.
So because we don't have any time period stipulated in our bylaws currently, saying that a trustee has to wait 12 months to basically try again. Our bylaws do not say anything like that about a time period right now. There's nothing specified
So you could bring it forward again the next meeting.
as of our bylaws right
again?
now, correct? Yep.
But
trustee.
it would need a majority, right? To get on the floor, or, no?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
Trustee Burgess?
It was included in our special rules. You remember, for those who were on the board of 2014 to 2018, when we had a major bylaw review facilitated by a parliamentarian, that thing that I referred to was just a chart with motions. So it was included. I have previous iterations, as you know, some of us do, of the previous bylaws, but it was a special rule that, and the intent of the rule was so that it wouldn't be like we've all had, you know, kids in the back seat saying, are we there yet, are we there yet, are we there yet? You can't bring it up every meeting, for example. You have to wait 12 months. If it has been defeated, you can reintroduce a similar motion, the same motion if you want, giving proper notice, et cetera, meeting all the other rules. But that doesn't exist anymore. So I consider personally a gap in our bylaws and our special rules, because I think that was it was a very handy thing, not handy, was a proper rule to have. But right now, with its elimination, we are open to the bylaws as they exist, so.
Anything further on that? Yes, trustee Hatfield.
Thank you. On that, could someone clarify for me if there's a difference between bringing up again a defeated motion or a reconsideration motion, which is totally different? Right.
Right, yeah, right.
So
Or a
there is a
motion that
difference?
never got a seconder, right?
So there is
Yeah.
a difference, or there isn't a difference between a defeated motion and a motion to reconsider? Because a motion to
Burgess.
reconsider could be something that passed.
That's right.
A motion to
Correct.
reconsider generally is within the same meeting or almost immediately after. And it has to be brought forward by somebody on the prevailing side. In other words, if somebody has defeated something, it has to be somebody who has changed their mind as close to the original decision being made as possible. So during the same meeting, because you've thought about it or some new information came forward, or
it is.
at the closest meeting next to it. You can't really bring something up to reconsider 4 meetings down the road. You can bring something up, a meeting to amend something previously adopted, but,
I know what the difference is between
Right.
defeated and reconsidered.
Right.
What I'm asking is.
yes.
Because I think
This is for everybody, though, the answer.
you've been using the terms synonymously, and I don't know that they are. And my question was, is there a distinction in however we rewrote the bylaws?
There isn't presently in the bylaws the special rule that says somebody who has brought forward a motion that has been defeated by the same mover can't be brought forward within a 12-month period. That doesn't exist anymore. So
Right.
Right, and you're right, we did use similar language to reconsider a motion that had been defeated, but it's the distinction is by the original mover.
Okay.
Or by anybody who supported it in that way. Who
I have to go read my bylaws.
who was defeated. In other words, you can't, it's a matter of rehashing something. So it doesn't exist, we did pore over it all, it got eliminated with the last bylaw review. It was a special rule. So motion to reconsider is always in order, generally. Right. But not something that you have brought forward as a motion and was defeated if you're the mover and supported
Okay,
it.
but a minute ago you said that if you want to bring forward a motion to reconsider, it has to be done like very quickly after the action's taken. I don't want to belabor this.
Right.
I just think you've been using the terms
Unclear?
together and have not made the distinction. So I'll just read the bylaws. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I don't mean to be unclear. So, to be clear, motion to reconsider is in our bylaws now, and it is in Robert's rules, and is in order if it's brought forward by somebody who is on the prevailing side.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on that, trustees? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we are at presentations. We have one presentation, and that is the student trustee presentation. I don't think we are doing a student of the month tonight because there wasn't a meeting, correct? Okay, so, but you do have a report, and who's doing that? Okay, take it away.
So last month, Student Senate hosted the 10th Annual Student Leadership Conference at the Chicharo Club. We'd like to thank Director Kelly for your inspirational greetings and for supporting student leadership. Our keynote speaker was Taha Ismail, a fourth-year health and biomedical science student at the University of Windsor. Taha is highly involved in the university community while maintaining academics worthy of President's Honor Roll each year. He's also the groups coordinator where he manages over 250 student groups and clubs. He's also a research assistant at the Great Lakes Institute of Environmental Research, a teaching assistant, vice president of educational development for students offering support, and president of Share a Smile. He spoke about how he developed as a leader and the importance of learning how to interact with your student council members to inspire them and to come together and work as a team. Anumita and I had the pleasure of attending the Ontario Student Trustee Association Fall General Meeting in Toronto last month. Again, we'd like to thank Director Kelly for supporting this professional development opportunity. We had the chance to hear from influential keynote speakers including Nora Marsh, the Chief Executive Officer of EQAO, Nancy Naylor, Deputy Minister of Education. These speakers inspired us to continue our work in supporting students across Ontario. One of the workshops I attended was hosted by the Student Wellbeing Working Group, of which Anumita is the co-chair of. This group is working to create monthly well-being tips for high school students. And we released our first tip this month, which is available on our OSTA Twitter and Instagram. Our fellow student trustees ran a workshop on the provincial student trustee regulation, also ran a mock board meeting. The board of directors gave us a talk on how to cultivate a professional presence in the boardroom. These training sessions helped Anumita and I become more comfortable in our role as student trustees. I'm happy to report that Anumita and I have moved forward with our elementary outreach initiative. We hosted 5 elementary school presentations, and feedback from students has been very positive. We look forward to continuing these presentations throughout the year. Principals are welcome to contact us via email if they're interested in arranging a presentation to their students in grade 7s and grade 8. Student Senate is collectively brainstorming for a holiday giving activity, and we're looking forward to a presentation by Mrs. Pauli on managing stress at our December meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. There are no delegations tonight, no one on the speakers list. And we are at items of new business, L1, a name for the new K-8 school in LaSalle. And the recommendation is as determined by the Board of Trustees. Trustee Leclerc? Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's with great honor and privilege that we're here tonight to present to the board of the Greater Essex County District School Board proposals for possible new names for the new school to be built in the town of LaSalle. I have with us the committee that worked on this, and I'm going to turn that over to Principal Sean Dufour to introduce the members of the committee.
Thank you. Our committee was made up of, as per guidelines in the regulation, so we have school council representatives, Melissa Koseji, who's our current chair, and Yasmin Jacy, who's our current treasurer. We also have some staff representatives, Lydia Ardavini, grade 3-4 teacher, Cindy Guinard, our learning support teacher. There she is. And we had 2 student representatives as well, Taylor Briscoe, grade 7, and Kayla Poulin in grade 7.
So I'd like to call on Taylor to present the first half of our report.
The initial meeting on October 10th. The initial meeting on October 10th began with a presentation of historical and cultural background of the area in which the new school will be located and review of input received from the public survey conducted June to September 2019. The precipitating discussion identified a direction the committee wished to follow in determining possible names for the building. There was consensus that a name should be reflective of the natural features and history of the LaSalle community. The committee was also unified in its commitment that the name of the school should be distinctive, help create an identity, and incorporate a promise to be upheld by the future action of the school community. The environment, a sense of hope, and desire for peace and harmony were the predominant themes examined by the committee. Following the discussion, the list of all suggested names in the community survey was revealed to the committee. A short list of potential names was created, and further research was assigned to committee members prior to the next meeting.
Information was shared with the committee at its second meeting, October 22nd, about Carolinian Forest area waterways, and logical agricultural practices. This information inspired a discussion of the natural assets in the LaSalle area. The committee focused on trees as symbols of the natural heritage of the region, in particular the oak, which there are 10 varieties common to the Carolinian forest zone. The abundance of trails for walking, biking, and hiking in the area also became a topic for discussion. In order to incorporate these ideas and the committee's desire to establish a promise of future action by the school community, the name Legacy Oak Trail Public School was conceived. As the primary suggestion, the secondary suggested name is Heritage Woods Public School. Both these names were agreed on anonymously by the committee to be submitted to the Board of Trustees. Each name is a tribute to the area's natural history and sense of environmental awareness and establishes an identity for the new school to follow. This cultivation and preservation of nature and an acknowledgement of its importance in the future health and growth of our communities.
So I'd like to thank the committee. We'll entertain any questions. There's just one thing I'd like to point out in the report. The suggested name of Legacy Oak Trail Public School is printed with a trails, so it would be without the S. It's singular. So if I could add just briefly, the committee already spoke about the oak and its importance to the community. But trail also, because the school is located right next to the LaSalle trails, and we envision the possibility of running a trail to connect with the LaSalle Trails and possibly working with an organization such as IRCA to create our own oak forest. So entertain any questions.
Any questions from trustees? Trustee Sipkar? Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I grew up in LaSalle. I went to Sandwich West and Sandwich Secondary. And so I have to say I was actually leaning towards Heritage Woods because I grew up in Heritage Estates. But upon speaking with Trustee Leclerc and hearing your presentation tonight, I really love the tie-in to the LaSalle Trails, and I think that's a really great fit, and also the connection to nature with the oak tree. So I just want to say great work, and I really do love both names, but I'm excited for what you guys have brought forward. So.
Just to comment on that, there was considerable discussion about heritage because of the existence of heritage estates, and it was considerable discussion. However, the boundaries don't take in just the heritage area, it's much broader. So that's how we drifted over to the Legacy Oak Trail.
Any questions from trustees? Trustee Burgess?
Procedurally, is it after this presentation that we would put a motion on the floor for that suggestion?
Yes.
I'm hoping so.
Okay.
Any further questions from trustees? Trustee Halberstadt?
Yes, I would make a motion to name the school Legacy Oak Trail. I think Trustee Leclerc explained it pretty well. I also like the heritage designation. It kind of rolls off your tongue, but it's not as totally accurate as the other one with the legacy.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Trustee Leclerc? Okay, any comments, questions? So the motion on the floor is to name the new school Legacy Oak Trail Public School. Any further questions or comments from trustees? Okay, seeing none, all those in support? Any opposed? Thank you very much, and thank you to the committee. Fantastic work. That was a great presentation. Trustee Burgess?
Just to follow it, so according to our procedure, what can we expect now? The next report back would be something like on colors and mascots and whatever else? What's the next step, is my question.
Who can comment from administration?
I believe the
Director
rest of,
Kelly?
I believe the rest of that information in terms of colors, mascots, is dealt with the school community.
Trustee Leclerc?
So it's not a final decision, but I think one of the comments or discussions was around the name owls, because they hang out in trees. And it also translates very well into Ibu for the French immersion, if we have French immersion available at that school. So I don't think we're committed to that 100%, and it is their decision, but I think there was some energy around that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you again to the committee. Great job. Okay, we are now at L2. This is a policy and regulation regarding extracurricular. The recommendation is that the board approve the policy extracurricular as presented and that the board approve the regulation extracurricular as presented. Would someone from the committee like to move the policy? Trustee Higgison, and a seconder? Trustee Olmsted. Any comments, questions from trustees? Trustee Hatfield?
Thank you. I would like to propose an amendment to the policy statement. It's on page 16. First, let me explain why. I appreciate that the committee added the word equitable in front of opportunity, because we talk about that, that every child should have equitable opportunities in our schools for whatever we do. But then we go on to say that extracurricular programs are a privilege for students. And then, again, we emphasize the privilege in the last sentence. And I think it's overdone by making students feel that maybe it isn't really equitable because it's a privilege, and it's really hammered in the next two sentences. It's a privilege, and don't you ever forget it. So I would like to make an amendment that the last sentence be, all schools in the Greater Essex County District School Board must develop a school policy for participation in extracurricular activities, period.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? Trustee Sipcar? Any comments, questions from trustees? Did you want to speak more to
I think
it?
I've said enough.
Any comments, questions from trustees on the amendment? So the amendment is to strike the last part of the last sentence on page 16, and that is, which recognizes that participation is a privilege. Okay, all those in support of the amendment? Any opposed? Okay, the amendment carries. Now we're back to the main motion. Any comments? Trustee Hatfield.
Thank you. On page 17 now, under the regulations, under the first regulation, we use acronyms. I'm not sure what DECA is. I know what the other ones all are, but I think we've had discussions about trying not to do that in our policy statements and regulations, because parents often go to our website to refer to these documents, and they may not know what these mean. So I think that when we're doing these formal kind of documents that are important to parents, I think we should spell it out, even though it's long, like WEXA and SWASA. But I still think that it has been raised a few times as a concern by trustees. And it's interesting that we put First League Robotics and then in brackets FLR. So I just think we need to be consistent, and I think that these documents are used by parents and not just in-house people. So I would suggest that regulations should always have them spelled out, like First League Robotics, and then in brackets put the FLR or whatever, in case it's referred to again down further into the document. But I think we should develop that as a consistent model.
So are you proposing an amendment to this policy? Basically to write out
Regulation. Do we approve the regulations as
the
well?
regulation? Yep.
Okay, yeah. Yes, as an amendment.
Okay, is there a seconder? Trustee Halberstadt, any comments, questions? Trustee Leclerc?
I'll just comment that First League Robotics is incorrect as it stands anyway. It's actually First Robotics, not First League Robotics.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Trustee Jane?
DECA doesn't really have one specific like long form. There's multiple long forms that have kind of shifted throughout the years. So I mean, I don't know if we want to just pick one or if we would want to leave DECA kind of out of it. Like what my school goes off of, it's demonstrate excellence, celebrate achievement. But I know there have been many other like full forms of DECA before too.
Okay, so would that be, can we entertain, would we take DECA out? Yeah.
I think there is an actual definition on the DECA website, so I don't know, but I've been involved in DECA, and I think there is an actual acronym. Maybe people have adapted it with qualities, but I think there is, so if we used it off the original website and the organization, I think we might be okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else then on the motion to basically write out the whole acronyms? And noted that that First League Robotics is incorrect, so to take out, yeah, the word league. Comments, questions? Okay, all those in support to write out the acronyms? Any opposed? Okay, and that carries. Anything further on the main policy and regulation? Okay, seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in support of the policy and regulation, extracurricular activities as amended? All those in support? Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you. Okay, the next policy is admission to French immersion. And the recommendation is that the board approve the policy admission to French immersion as presented. Excuse me, can I have someone from the, to put it on the floor? Trustee Sipcar, is there a seconder? Trustee Higgison. Trustee Sipcar, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. The only thing to note of this one was that it was, I'll say corrected to reflect the timelines of things. So there were specific timelines of when students are permitted to enter. And if there are any questions about that specifically, I would direct them to Superintendent Howard or Director Kelly.
Any comments, questions on the policy? Trustee Hatfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do have a problem with that particular paragraph, the second paragraph. Kind of the same point as using acronyms. The French immersion program is an early immersion model. This is a policy statement, and the early immersion model isn't defined. So again, for parents that are using it, they would have to try to figure out what that means, and I don't know where they would go to find that. And I thought the next sentence, students may enter the French immersion program beyond October of grade 1 with a demonstrated proficiency in French language. When I first read that, I felt it was saying that that's the time that you can enter. And I had a problem with the way that that was expressed. So it wasn't sitting right with me, that paragraph. And then
So
Then-
do you
wait,
do you
yeah.
want to go
So
through the
then-
whole paragraph, or do you want to deal with the early immersion model
So
first?
then, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So then, I read this wonderful long-term accommodation plan, and there's a real simple sentence in here that just tells you who can go to French immersion. So on page 149, it says, and this is just perfect, this is what I think that paragraph should say. It's simple. Students can enter the program in JK or SK or grade 1. Our policy is they can enter up to October 1 of the grade 1 year. That's like what you're trying to say, but it's very simple to read. And that's what I guess I'm thinking that that's what your early immersion model is. So it's just a very simple, like just refer back to this and just put that in there.
So your suggestion then is to replace the the entire second paragraph with
So-
what you just read, or
So it
which
would-
piece?
It would say, students can enter the program in JK or SK or grade 1 up to October 1st of the grade 1 year.
And
And then it doesn't say anything in here about this part, about the language skills, about the grade, like it doesn't say that in our models of delivery. So I don't know if this is just,
so is this
So I-
is this a question for administration then?
I guess
or-
it
or-
is, because I don't know if
Yeah,
this
okay.
part needs to be included, because it's
Okay.
not included under our models of delivery.
Okay. Superintendent Howard, is that something that you can take?
Make that change as requested. And all that the policy is doing is defining now that there is a proficiency test and that it includes those components. So that might not have been included in the accommodation, but that is in place. Students beyond grade 1, October of grade 1. So we can make those changes as noted and then say that there's a proficiency test beyond October of grade 1.
Okay, is there a seconder? Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Burgess,
just to make sure I'm clear on this, I think the amendment makes it much clearer because it sounds like a sequitur and it's not. So if you put all that information, that sentence that was in the long-term accommodation plan on page 149, to me that substitutes the first sentence, but then the point of beyond grade 1, I think is still intact. So the sentence that says students may enter the French immersion program beyond October of grade 1 with a demonstrated is fine. Right. So I don't think anything needs to be changed there. So it's a substitution of one, and then the other is as here. Okay, that's what's still on the floor.
Okay, any further comments, questions? Trustee Sipcar?
I am in support of that amendment to the policy. I think adding that extra 2 sentences there from that makes a lot of sense because that was the clarification that we all sought at the policy committee. So I think you're right that it really does add that sort of clarification. And I also agree that the ending portion of clarifying the proficiency test happens after that point. So I'm in full support of that.
Any further questions, comments from trustees? Okay, all those in support of the amendment? Ms. LaBeouf, would you like the whole thing read then?
I just want to clarify that I have this noted properly. So the paragraph is going to start off with students can enter the program in JK or SK or grade 1 up to October 1st of the grade 1 year. And then it's just going to continue with the rest of the paragraph. Okay, thank you.
Okay, did we pass that amendment? I don't think we did. Okay, so any further comments, clarification? Okay, it's been stated. All those in support of the amendment? Any opposed? Okay, the amendment carries. Thank you. Anything further from trustees on the French immersion policy? Okay, seeing none. All those in support of the policy as amended? Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you. Okay, we are at L4, the policy and regulation for inclement winter weather. The recommendation is that the board approve policy PAD 05, inclement winter weather, emergency school closings, and transportation as presented, and that the board approve regulation RAD 05, inclement winter weather, emergency school closings, and transportation as presented. Can I have somebody put Trustee Hatfield? Is there a seconder? Trustee Higgison, any comments, questions about the policy? Trustee Leclerc?
Okay, so I kind of struggle with the definition of winter weather. Winter weather is defined as any winter-like weather, including, I think, how about winter weather is defined as weather including ice, freezing rain? I just don't know why we need to put in like, because it seems redundant.
So you're on page 21, the second
Yes.
paragraph there?
My apologies.
And that's okay, and you're suggesting winter weather is defined as including snow, ice, okay, et cetera. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Trustee Cook? Any questions about the amendment? Trustee Higgison?
So I just had a question about that. So we're saying winter weather is defined as including snow, ice, freezing rain associated and thawing conditions. Is that the amendment? That's
Weather included. So winter weather is defined as weather including snow, ice, freezing rain.
so winter weather is defined as any weather. No, we can't say any weather including. As weather including snow, ice, freezing rain. So winter weather is defined as weather including snow, ice, freezing rain, and associated thawing conditions.
Winter weather can't be winter-like weather.
Can Shelley speak?
So I think the reasoning why we used winter-like weather is because sometimes these conditions can occur outside of like winter time. So that was why it was worded that way, but I can certainly appreciate the confusion, yes. Yes.
Okay, so the proposed change is winter weather is defined as weather including snow, ice, freezing rain, et cetera, et cetera. Was there a seconder for that? Right, Trustee Cook. Any further comments on that amendment? Okay, seeing none. All those in, oh, Trustee Chin, did you have a comment?
I think without any,
Yeah,
it read weird.
yeah.
That's part of the proposal, is to take the word any out.
Oh, it should be there.
Oh, I mean, it should be there.
So you're, okay. So the amendment on the amendment is to keep the word any. So you're saying winter weather is defined as any weather, including snow, ice, freezing rain, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a seconder for the amendment on the amendment? Trustee Leclerc. Okay, all those in support of the amendment? On the amendment. Okay, so back to the amendment is now, winter weather is defined as any weather, including snow, et cetera, et cetera. All those in support of the amendment? Do you have a, yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't think that sentence makes sense to what the intent is. It's saying winter weather is defined as any weather, including, I think it just should be winter weather is defined as snow, ice, freezing rain, like just simplify to what the weather that we're trying to describe is. So it would be a friendly on the friendly.
It's an amendment on the amendment. So the suggestion is winter weather is defined as snow, ice, freezing rain. Okay, is there a seconder for that?
Yeah, that's clear.
Trustee Leclerc, any comments, questions? Okay, any questions on that? Okay, Trustee Chin.
Oh, I mean, if you mentioned winter weather as the snow, ice, I think maybe winter condition is better than winter weather. If you said weather and you just mentioned those snow, ice, I don't know. Yeah, it's up to
Any
you.
weather condition.
Okay, I'm not
Weather
following the amendment. What would the change be?
I mean, winter condition or winter weather condition.
including snow. Yeah, that's right.
Is there a seconder for that change? Is there a seconder for that change? No, that would be an amendment on an amendment on an amendment. So we're going to deal with this one first. The suggestion is winter weather, I believe, Trustee Chin, winter weather is defined as any weather condition, including snow, ice, freezing rain. Is that correct, Trustee Chin? Is that what you're suggesting? Okay, is there a seconder? Trustee Hatfield? Any comments, questions on that wording? Okay, all those in support?
Any opposed?
Okay, any opposed? Okay,
I liked it simpler.
okay. Anything further on this policy? Anything further on this policy? Or regulation? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those,
Can you restate it, because I'm lost where we landed?
so what we went with was, winter weather is defined as any weather condition, including snow, ice, freezing rain, etc. All those in support of the policy as amended? Any opposed? Seeing none. Okay, we are at L5, Policy and Regulation, Health and Safety, Workplace Violence, and Workplace Harassment. The recommendation is that the board approve policy PBA06, Health and Safety, Workplace Violence, and Workplace Harassment as presented, and that the board approve regulation RBA06, Health and Safety, thank you, Workplace Violence and Workplace Harassment as presented. Can I have a mover to put it on the floor? Trustee Hadfield, seconded by Trustee Higgison. Any comments, questions? Trustee Halberstadt.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering if the workplace violence that where injury results, violent incidents, is needed to be sent to the province. I spoke to the policy committee, the ministry this past week with regard to requirements for boards to monitor and record violent incidents in order to obtain accurate data on which to base policies and planning. So I know that with students who are injured, that we need to report this to the ministry. I'm just wondering if staff is also the same requirements for staff violence that result in injuries.
And who can take that? Superintendent Houston? Superintendent Wilcox?
It's reported through Tim Lozon, our Health and Safety Officer. Sorry, correction, Ministry of Labor.
Thank you. Anything further on this policy? Trustee Sipcar.
I just wanted to note that the content is very minor in terms of the changes, but the real change was with the heading, with the title. And I think that's important because it shows up on our website, and that is something that employees, people in the community can Google, which is Google lookup. And I think that it makes it much more clear than occupational health and safety. It deals directly, it clearly articulates what the policy deals with, which is workplace violence and workplace harassment. So that was the primary driver for the change.
T. Higgison?
And just quickly further to that, in our discussions, I wanted to thank Juliana's team for all the consultation that they did on this. They really did do a quite significant consultation with employee groups and things like that. And so I want to thank them for their work on it, and I think it was a really good change.
Thank you. Anything further from trustees? Okay, seeing none. All those in support of the policy as presented? Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you. Okay, we are at L6, Code of Conduct Regulation. The appendix and policy and regulation, personal mobile and computing devices used during the instructional day. The recommendation is that the Greater Essex County District School Board approve the amended policy, personal mobile and computing devices used during the instructional day as presented, and that the Greater Essex County District School Board approve the amended regulation, personal mobile and computing devices used during the instructional day as presented, and that the Greater Essex County District School Board approve the amended Code of Conduct appendix attached to the regulation as presented. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Higgison, seconded by Trustee Sipcar. Would someone from the committee like to speak to it? Trustee Sipcar.
So I might defer a little bit to Superintendent Mills, but just to give a bit of clarification for trustees, this was my interpretation of it. Our administration had already done a great job with this policy, and it did reflect a lot of the changes that the province wanted to see. It was just more cleaning up the language so that it matched the province's language. I do think that we discussed about whether a cell phone ban was an accurate narrative, but really what it does is any mobile devices were just used to, it was clearing up the notion that any of those mobile devices were used to support teaching and learning, and that was what our administration was trying to make clear in this policy. So I might defer to Superintendent Mills or Director Kelly if there's anything to add there.
Anything to add? Superintendent Mills?
No, I think you did an excellent job describing the process we went through. It was an update to Policy Program Memorandum 128, which is the Provincial Code of Conduct, and that came to us to update both of these.
Trustee Burgess, question?
Yes, I wasn't at the policy committee, so I'm asking, and it might have been something that was discussed, but handwritten 31, students are not permitted to take photos, record audio and or video in school buildings or during off-site school-sponsored events before, during, and after school hours unless they have permission from school staff and the people being photographed, recorded in advance. This is one of those things that on a very fine line, if you have seen persistent behavior that you've brought to the attention of those folks that you're supposed to bring to the attention of, and you're not either taken seriously and or believed. Sometimes having real evidence moves the dial in that direction. I don't want to maybe encourage that or say that that's something that's used in a big way, but does that mean that it'll be dismissed and that you'll actually have a further infraction? It'll be an infraction showing if something is brought to administration's attention in some sort of print or recorded way?
Okay, thank you. Someone from administration, Superintendent Mills?
I think the spirit of that statement is to respect the privacy of some of our students and their families, because we do have that request quite often where parents do not want their children to be video recorded, filmed, photographs, those sorts of things, and so I believe that's the spirit of that statement.
Any further questions from trustees, comments? Trustee Hatfield?
Thank you. Mine have to do with the policy statement. So the title is Personal Mobile and Computing Devices Use During the Instructional Day. So is that to infer or assume that the sentence relating to staff means staff who work in classrooms? Or all staff? So, because it doesn't say, so permits the staff use of personal mobile and computing devices when it supports teaching and learning. So does this mean that everyone who works in this building is excluded from the policy? Does it mean that staff who work as school custodians are excluded? Because they don't necessarily work during the instructional day? Does that mean that staff who work the day shift can't use it, but those who work the afternoon shift can? There's been nothing here to indicate in the policy statement, which is where it should be, on who we're making reference to. Is it all staff of the board? Is it just staff who work in classrooms? And I'm really uncomfortable about the and when appropriate permission has been granted. If this is a policy statement, I don't think it should be that generalized, because I don't know if you're talking about the facility services manager giving permission to a custodian. I don't know if you're talking about a principal giving permission to a support staff or an occasional staff. So I just think that whole sentence needs more clarification, because I'm not sure who it's referring to.
Okay, who can take that? Trustee Sipcar?
Is the issue that you would like to see it specify that it's for staff that are in classrooms specifically, I think, which is the intent of that sentence? So would adding something, whether it's midway through or towards the end, specifically regarding classrooms, would that assuage those concerns?
Well, just as a point of reference, under the regulation, there is a preamble to the regulation, and it talks about within the confines of the school environment. So I don't know if that means, again, I go back to the custodians who work in the hallways, who work afternoon shifts. So custodians also work in the classrooms, and they certainly work within the school environment. So I don't know if I don't know what the objective is. I don't know if the objective is to target teachers and classroom support staff. I don't know. So I'm just making assumptions. So that's my question.
Superintendent Mills?
And again, we go back to the PPM, which talks about use during instructional time or during the instructional day. And so I believe when we're talking about that, we're talking about all staff that support teaching and learning. So that could be support staff. That could be the custodian. I think it's anyone during that instructional time.
Trustee Burgess?
I think this has raised a concern, and I don't think it's a matter of just wordsmithing. I think that's actually a gap. And I'd like to, if I could, enter a motion to refer this back to policy to work on, I think, the policy statement more than anything, so that it's very clear in the policy statement of who it affects during instructional time and what that actually entails, because I think it still could be interpreted kind of, not clearly.
Is there a seconder? Trustee Hatfield. Okay, I have Trustee Cheen, Trustee Higgison, and Director Kelly. Did you want to? Did you want to speak to it?
I did just want to mention, though, that I think maybe we taken the other policy that we had and tried to fit the PPM into it, so maybe some redefining would be helpful. So thank you for the suggestions.
Trustee Cheen?
Thank you. And it just reminded me about my previous experience. I did visit a class, and I do feel that a teacher used the mobile phone during the instruction too much. And as parent, I was confused that if there should be any limitation on the length of using, length and the times of using the cell phone. And when I observe that, almost half of the class is using the mobile phone, and the kids are very young. So I don't know if from this policy there is no any limitation. Kinds of all are allowed as long as support teaching and learning, but there is no any restrictions on that. Yeah, thank you.
And Trustee Higgison? Okay. Anything further on the referral back to policy motion? Okay, all those in support to refer the whole package back to policy? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you.
If I could, since it has been referred back to policy, if there are any additional concerns like the duration or frequency of use or any of those things that are also gaps that you've seen since we've already referred it back, please send them forward to those folks on policy and or attend the meeting. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Burgess. We are now at L8. Draft audited financial statements for the year ended August 31st, 2019. You did get a handout tonight. Would somebody like to speak to it? Trustee Hatfield, would you like to speak to it? Okay.
You have another blue package that you got in your folders tonight. So the first part on top is the annual report that's required to go to the ministry. And then the second part underneath is the draft audited financial statements. And I think, is Sean here? There he is. I don't know if he's going to be speaking to the audited financial statements. No? Okay. No? There's no presentation to go with that? Yes? No?
Just very briefly, we can report that the audited financial statements, the auditors are proposing an unqualified audit opinion, which means that the statements are fairly presented in accordance with Canadian accounting standards. There were no issues that were identified during the audit that caused any concerns. And the finance staff did a fabulous job working through the year-end process. And we're happy to take any questions that you have.
Trustee Hatfield?
Just a comment, because the audit committee did meet yesterday and went over the audited financial statements pretty thoroughly. And I just also wanted to thank Sean as the manager of financial services and Leah Beneteau as the accounting supervisor and all the others that were involved in putting this together, because it really was a great audit experience on both sides from our staff in preparing for it and in the way the audit outcome went so smoothly. So thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you. Any questions from trustees? Comments? Okay, I don't think a recommendation is, or a motion is required. We thank you for the work. Thank you. Okay, we are now at L9. This is a motion from, Superintendent Armstrong?
Sorry, I believe we need a motion to approve these financial statements.
So I would move that they
Trustee Hatfield?
accept it.
Okay, and a seconder? Trustee Olmsted? Okay, any comments, questions on that motion? Seeing none. All those in support? Any opposed? And that carries. Thank you, Superintendent Armstrong. Okay, we are now at a notice of motion from Trustee Cheen. Her recommendation is that the Greater Essex County District School Board amend its procedural bylaw to record in the minutes the identification of those trustees who cast dissenting votes on motions passed by the majority, and that an individual trustee be allowed to request that the minutes reflect a brief summary or clarification of the trustee's opinion voiced at the preceding meeting. So my understanding is that this would be a recommendation to amend our bylaws.
Amend or make some changes to the bylaw, because I do think there is some, rationale mistake and something wrong with the procedure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to make sure I completely understood the intent of the motion. So it's a motion to amend our bylaws then, if I understand correctly. Okay, so that requires a seconder, obviously, to be debated, and a change to our bylaws requires 2/3. Okay, support. So Trustee Cheen, would you like to put the motion on the floor?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Is there a seconder? Trustee Halberstadt? Okay. Trustee Hatfield?
I don't know when I would do this, but I wanted to know about splitting it into two parts. The first part is about the voting, recording the voting, and the second part is about content of minutes. How can I ask that be split?
I think you can do it now as an amendment. So are you saying that you would do, that the Greater Essex County District School Board amend its procedural bylaw to record in the minutes the identification of those trustees who cast dissenting votes on motions passed by majority as part one?
Yes.
And that an individual trustee be allowed to request that the minutes reflect a brief summary or clarification of the trustee's opinion voiced at the preceding meeting.
So, yes.
Okay, so that's two, and we will do two separate votes on that, and they will both require 2/3 support. Okay? Actually, I guess I need a seconder for that. Is there a seconder? Trustee Sipcar. Okay, any questions, comments to split that? Okay, seeing none, all those in support to split the recommendation, as Trustee Hatfield indicated. Any opposed? One opposed. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are now at part one. Trustee Cheen, would you like to comment?
Comment on the first part? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I would like to the minutes to record the identification of those trustees who cast dissenting votes on motions passed by the majority, because I think about transparency issue because we represent the constituent and they would like to know constituency and they would like to know how we represent them and how we vote for each motion. So I previously it was not identified, and I think it's good for the motion to reflect it and make our opinions more clear on that. So I would like it to be recorded in the minutes about the identification of each vote. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for part one then? Trustee Halberstadt. Okay, and Trustee Hatfield?
First, I have a question, and then I'd like to speak to the motion. So, is it correct that we have this in our procedural bylaws, or is it just a practice?
So in our bylaws, there's not a lot of discussion about what should be captured in the minutes in the bylaws. However, I guess more in speaking to the second part, I mean, trustees can always request, that certain comments be included in the minutes. So, with regard to the first part, this would be a new inclusion, and it would be a change in practice, other than if a trustee had requested for a recorded vote.
Okay, then I'm going to go forward with my comments and hope that we won't get hung up on whether or not this needs to be a bylaw, although it probably needs to be a new bylaw as opposed to amending it. But I'm going to put that aside and speak to how I feel about making identification in the minutes of how we vote. So I'm going to plead guilty to being complacent about the format of our minutes. I haven't thought about it in a long time. And I know what the standard line is, that, it's not a transcript of what everybody said. It's a business record of the action taken. So I know all those lines, and I've just never thought about it. And I don't like it when I become complacent. So I did give this some thought, and I did do some research. And the opinion that I found, and I looked at a few parliamentarians on what they had to say about minutes, and they were all kind of using Robert's rules as their standard. But the conclusions that they were coming up with, and none of them were in disagreement with each other. It's pretty standard that the format of the minutes can vary depending on the standards established by an organization. So if we want it to do something, we have the right to do that, which is number one. And Robert's rules do allow for regular recording of the vote tally. That's something that's offered up as an option under the guidelines. And as one parliamentarian, I have some quotes from a particular parliamentarian who was examining Robert's rules. And his opinion, and one quote was, most importantly, the minutes need to be informative. And I think Trustee Chin is seeking to have that recorded vote because it is informative. And I think that that's important. And another comment was, be precise in the information. So let's be precise in how we all voted, because I think that is important to our constituents. And this particular fellow, his name is Jennings, also said, be precise in the information that you're providing, because this is the record of the action taken to clearly memorialize the facts. That struck me because there was a point in this past 12 months where I did want to see how the vote was, because I couldn't remember exactly. And I did go back to the minutes, and it just said motion carried. So it didn't give me that information I was looking for. And if you're looking for transparency and accountability in how we perform as trustees, I think that the way that we vote is probably the highest level of accountability to show our constituents how we responded to debate that we voted either for or against. That's the most transparent way of showing how you're performing as a trustee. And now that we're live streaming our meetings, I think that we have an obligation to equalize the playing field. People who are watching the live stream will know how we voted, but people who want to refer to the paper record of the meeting will not have that same information. So for me, to record the dissenting votes as the motion is asking for equalizes what I see as inequality. Because our minutes are posted on their website, and we have constituents who may choose to go look at that. We have others who may look at the live streaming, but they won't both get the same information. So rather than have me sit here at every meeting and ask for a recorded vote, it would be a lot easier if we just adopted a practice of recording the way that we vote. I think that hits to equalizing the playing field, it hits to transparency, it hits to accountability, it hits to clearly memorializing the facts, it hits to being more precise in the information we present. All of these standards that I found in my research, I think it hits the mark, and I think it's a practice that's worthy of consideration. So I hope the trustees would support that first part. Thank you.
Trustee Burgess? Trustee Sipcar?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm sympathetic to that. I guess my question that I have, and this would be of administration, is how burdensome or onerous will this task be? If ever, and also how much length will this add to our meeting? Is it for every, how many items did we go through tonight? And so my concern is just related to bogging down an already seemingly very full meeting schedule. And if we do have the mechanism of being able to request recorded votes on important decisions, then shouldn't we just use the mechanism that's already in place, because we do have a live streaming function and we do have the ability to go and see those results more specifically. And so I guess my concern and my question to administration would be, how burdensome is this since we don't have a clerk?
Director Kelly?
I think it'd be fair to say it would take extra time to make sure that we had the recorded vote accurate, and that would be take time in terms of adding that to the Secretary's minutes.
I have Trustee Leclerc next, and then Trustee Halberstadt, and Trustee Burgess.
So my comment would be, we already have a mechanism, and we can request a recorded vote at any time. So I don't know why we need to change it. The second part of that is a majority of our votes tend to be unanimous. Very rarely are they not unanimous. So I think that we don't need to go down a path of creating extra work for the person that's responsible for our minutes. When we have the option of requesting a recorded vote when somebody deems it necessary and you have consent of the rest of the board. I understand what Trustee Chin's wants to achieve, but I think the mechanism exists for when we need it to occur already.
Thank you. Trustee Halberstadt?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm in favor of this motion. I think it's really a no-brainer. Just certainly not saying my experience on city council was better than my experience here, but city councils all over everywhere they record dissenting votes. And as Trustee Leclerc said, 90%, 99, if you go through our agenda tonight, are unanimous votes. So the motion stresses it's only recording dissenting votes when you said carried and maybe one against or two or three, but whatever. I don't see it as a great onerous to administration to put a couple names down opposed. So for that reason, in the interest of, I guess, democracy and transparency, I agree with this.
Trustee Burgess?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I understand the intent, and I think I understand the discussion so far. I have a different perspective. I won't be supporting it, and my reasons are, from my understanding of all the governance training that we've had, we recognize ourselves as a board. Nowhere in the Education Act does it say the word constituency. We don't have constituents. We run at large. We don't have to reside anywhere except in our entire district. We tend to live in the areas that we are elected in, but that's a coincidence. We run at large. There's no requirement for us to reside in the area in which we are elected. When we make our decisions, we make a decision as a board. We don't make our decisions on behalf of a constituency. So it's a real fundamental governance piece to me. I understand the idea of having something recorded. That's why the mechanism for a recorded vote exists. We have that mechanism, and sometimes you do want to go on record. You do want to state emphatically that you are against something. You sometimes want to be emphatic that you're in favor of something, but usually you want to have something recorded that you're against something. However, the Education Act also states very clearly that once the determination of the board is made, that we are obligated to uphold the decision of the board. So even if you were a dissenting vote, your dissenting vote can come and be recorded as a recorded dissenting vote. The discussion can be captured in the minutes, and you can, during your discussion, make emphatically, Madam Chair, I would like to state it emphatically that I am opposed to this because blah, 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 and have that entered into. You can ask for that if you want it at the time. However, at the end of the day, when we make our decisions and we have to uphold the decision, even if we were originally dissenting, we should be able to do so recognizing democracy, understanding that the majority has won, whether that's simple majority or 2/3 or whatever it is, and say, I really didn't like it, I still really don't like it, but you know what? Guess what? The prevailing side was this, and this is why it passed. They said this, 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 and this against my this, this, and this. And you can explain it, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to be actually true transparency and true accountability to the folks that are in your area in which you were elected, you can blog about it, you can talk about it, you can be, couch it in terms of saying this was my opinion. However, I have to uphold this position because, and that's an act, that trumps any bylaw. This can come in a bylaw, but the act says you must uphold the decision of the board, and it's a governance thing. So to me, it's in my gut. I don't recognize constituents per se. Yes, we have a heart for those who are near to us, and we know our communities well, and we bring those concerns to this board, and we hope we can persuade everybody to see those things that we are really well aware of in the areas that we live. But corporately, we're a board, so I think as I heard earlier, we have the mechanism. We are a corporate board. I think it's redundant. I think it's unnecessary, and particularly since we have to uphold the decision in the end anyway.
Trustee Hatfield.
Thank you. Personally, I'm not comfortable invoking that high-level definition of the Education Act that we don't have constituents, that we don't have to hold ourselves accountable to anybody but the board. I believe that, call them whatever you want, call them people of Windsor and Essex County. I think that we have an obligation to be transparent. And I think Trustee Halberstadt said it very well and very plainly that, look, this doesn't happen often. It's just adding in a few names once in a while when we're not unanimous. And sometimes I've sat in this room for a long, long time, and I don't always know that a vote is going to be contentious or that it's going to be close. And so I might not think to ask for a recorded vote. And then afterwards, I wish I had, because I didn't expect that it was going to be so close. And I've seen times where the chair has had to say, you know, I'm not sure who's voting which way. Can we try this again? Because it was very close. It might have only passed by one vote, or it might have been a tie. And so we've got to put our hands up again. And it really doesn't take a lot of time to add the dissenting votes in when it happens. And I just don't feel comfortable being told that we have a mechanism. It might not be because I want to record my own dissenting vote, but I might have reasons why I want to know how my trustees, the trustees around the table voted. But if I don't know that they're not all going to vote unanimously, how do I know to ask for a recorded vote? So it's a very small percentage of votes that even will have dissenting votes. Like Trustee Halberstadt said, it's going to happen, you know, just a handful of times. And usually it's a small number. So the time it takes to recount or to you know, double check who voted which way, like it'll be done. I don't know that this is a big question of taking up somebody's time to write down the two names of the dissenting votes. And I don't like the fact that you know, I might not know that I need to ask because I don't know how everybody's going to vote. So it's not just for me that I want my dissenting vote recorded. There are other reasons why I want to know how people voted. So you're really not giving me the mechanism that I need. And I think that I think it is being accountable. I think it is meeting the high standards of minute taking by showing how elected people voted. And I like the fact that City Council does it too. So I think this is a no-brainer. I think we should hold ourselves out there to that accountability. We should just do it as a general practice and not have to ask for the mechanism to be invoked. Because, like I said, I don't always know that I need it or want it, or, you know, so let's just do it. It just happens a few times that there's a dissenting vote. I don't know why it's so complicated, and I don't know why we have to go to the Ed Act to figure this one out. But anyway, that's how I feel.
Trustee Chin?
Oh, thank you for your points. And I just want to explain that having this identification in the minutes does just give more transparency and give more accountability for individual trustees. It does not mean that we don't respect the vote, you know, the majority vote. We do respect, but people also wants to know whoever give their how they behave in the votes. So I think just giving more transparency is not conflict with them. And I want to give an example. And for the rainbow flag and motion, and I was the only one to opposite it, but I do respect the majority vote. But after that, because it was in the media, and a lot of people called me and explained their appreciation and explain their concerns and worries, complaints. So I think they, without this information, they may not know, you know, how this passed, because it's passed by absolute majority. So but they still feel good because even their minority, their voice are heard and someone represent them. So they said it's better than previously, just unanimously, sorry, and they just don't care about the procedure of the votes. So I think this procedure can give more transparency and accountability, and we do have to be responsible for our individual behavior as trustee. So thank you.
Trustee Burgess?
I have a question to really clarify, because I'm struggling with it. Through you, Madam Chair, if I could. How is this different from asking for a recorded vote? Because I'm looking at the business that we've done at hand tonight, and either on the amendment or the amendment on the amendment or the amendment on the amendment, I think we've probably had dissenting votes maybe 3, maybe 4 times tonight. So there's the logistics of that, but if at that point I wanted to have a recorded vote, I could have asked for, I dissented on a couple, and I could have asked for a recorded vote, and a vote could have gone about, okay, do we have a recorded vote on this? Okay, and then we go forward, and then I have my name in the minutes as a dissenting vote that I did not want that amendment, or I did not want that major motion. How will this make it more accountable? I don't see any value added. So through you, Madam Chair, if I could ask, what's the difference between this motion and asking for a recorded vote, which is what we have now, where you can go on record? You don't have to anticipate it. You can just ask for it. And if it's unanimous, then it's recorded unanimous.
Trustee Chin?
Okay, I perceive the asking for the how to say that recorded vote is an additional procedure, and it did cost our time and did cost our attention. Sometimes we focused on the motion and we forgot to ask for recorded, and there is no way for us to make it up. And actually, and it's just the clerk's, work, a little bit extra work to make a note, and we don't have to really, using the time to ask for that. And if we ask for that, and it's just, I think it's even extra work, for the procedure to take the time to ask, right? We can just record it automatically. Thank you.
Trustee Sipcar?
As a follow-up to that, through you, Madam Chair, my understanding is that when you say all in favor, let's say 4 or 5 of us raise our hand, all opposed, it wouldn't be recorded in that you would go individually to each one, but it would just be recorded in the minutes that trustee so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so voted opposed. So it actually wouldn't be a recorded vote every single time. And you could actually still you could still ask for a recorded vote, which would clearly articulate. So my understanding was that it wouldn't be a recorded vote every time, but it was just the opposing trustees would be noted. As per, and I think Trustee Halberstadt gave the example of City Council's minutes, where you can read that, and they've been doing that. So that was my understanding based on Trustee Burgess's question.
Trustee Hatfield?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And it would take a lot longer, I think like Trustee Chin said, it would take a lot longer to put a motion on the floor for a recorded vote and then vote on that than it would to just take note of the 2 people who dissented, or 3 or whatever number. It's just, it's not going around the room. It's just recording the opposing vote. It's quick, it's simple.
Trustee Higgison?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleagues. I found this discussion quite something to wrap my mind around. I won't be supporting this. I think we have what we need in place right now as far as policy and practice, and we have made great gains in transparency, and I think those things are available to us. As it's been pointed out, those things that are important to us, I think we've made great gains in those areas, and we have those things that are available to us. We do have procedures such as recorded votes, though I know it is a bit onerous. We do have those procedures available to us currently without amending procedural bylaws, and so as a matter of process, I think we have everything that we need right now.
Any further comments from trustees? Trustee Hatfield.
Thank you. So I guess I'm feeling very uncomfortable that some trustees are relying on a process that I see as being unfair. So this mechanism of asking for a recorded vote, like I tried to explain, there's more than one reason for asking for a recorded vote. So for asking for a recorded vote isn't just because I want it recorded how I voted. But I don't know that there's going to be dissenting votes until people vote. So how do I know when I want to ask for a recorded vote? So you're taking that level of accountability that I want to see from this board away from me. You're not giving me a mechanism. So I really resent that a couple trustees have tried to say that I have a mechanism in place, because I don't feel I do. I don't know that there's going to be a close vote until people vote. Like, you're assuming I'm going to know how everybody votes. I don't know that until they actually put their hands up and the vote's called. So don't tell me that I have a mechanism in place, because that's just not true.
Trustee Leclerc.
So as much as I appreciate Trustee Chin's intent, I do think there's a mechanism. And I also believe that this is a divergent from the norm. Maybe city council is a divergent from the norm. I've sat on numerous committees, different boards over the course of my life and career in governance, and I've never been on a board that records votes or dissenting votes. The motion or the minutes reflect the actions of the board. And at the end of the day, the actions, it's either carried or it's not. So I just can't see why we need to get there. I think the information is there. Trustee Higginson alluded to that. I really appreciate what your intent is, but I can't get there because I think we have mechanism. And I think it's a bit naive to think that you don't know where people are going to vote based on their comments during debate. You know where I stand on this one. So I think that reflects in the nature of the debate. And if you think that a recorded vote is appropriate, you can ask for one.
Trustee Burgess, you had a...
There is a point for information, because it's been raised twice, and I really want to put a fine point on it. There's a really distinct difference between an elected board and councilors. Councilors have constituents. They have a constituency. They are elected in an area. They are accountable to their constituents and constituency, and they have a voice for their constituents on a council. Boards, I say a 10-headed monster here, but it's not really. It's a 10-headed being. The thing is, we have to eventually speak as one, and so we don't have constituents. So it's a different mechanism. That's why the Ed Act says that, because we are a board.
Anything further from trustees? Trustee Halberstadt.
I'll ask for a recorded vote, please.
So a motion for a recorded vote. Is there a seconder to record this vote? Trustee Leclerc. Okay. All those in support to record this vote?
1, 2, 3, 4. Hands up.
Okay, hands up, please. Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, yeah.
And that carries. So this vote will be recorded. Anything further?
Definition of irony.
Okay. So as this would be a change to our bylaws, I'm going to exercise my right to vote as well. I do think that there is a mechanism, and that mechanism is the recorded vote. I think that if it's an issue that is important to you, if it's an issue that reveals itself to be contentious in the boardroom, or again, if it's an issue that it is important to you in some way, then you can always make a motion to have the vote recorded. And so I won't be supporting the first part of this recommendation. I think it will be onerous, given the number of times that I think, as Trustee Burgess pointed out, amendments to amendments to amendments. Would we actually record the dissenting votes at every time on that? We had several of those tonight. And so I don't see it. I think the mechanism is there, and that's to request a recorded vote. So, again, so this would be a potential change to our bylaws. It does require 2/3 by my math, because I am also voting that it will require 7 exactly. Okay, so all those in support of the motion. 1, 2, so Trustee Sipcar, Trustee Halberstadt in support, Trustee Cheen, and Trustee Hatfield in support. All those opposed. Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Cook, Trustee Burgess, Trustee Higgison, Trustee Olmsted, and myself, Trustee Sartori, and that motion fails. Thank you. The next part of the motion is that an individual trustee, or the other motion, is that an individual trustee be allowed to request that the minutes reflect a brief summary or clarification of the trustee's opinion voiced at the preceding meeting. Trustee Cheen, would you like to move that?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a seconder? Trustee Halberstadt. Trustee Cheen, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, please bear with me because sometimes my language issue, I may take more time. And the reason I want to bring up this topic is that based on the previous experience and about our rule, the motion about the put the flag under the national flag. And the result, voting result is that majority approved. But during the procedure, we do discuss the very important issue regarding the national protocol of the flag, that only one national flag can be on the pole, because a lot of people sent the comments to the trustees regarding it. But after we voted, there is no information, information about this, and there is no information about my reason of opposite. And I think we should be accountable and be responsible for the comments of the people. And if it can show us that we really considered the procedure and we voted, but in the minutes, there is nothing for that. So when I observed that, I request to make up in the minutes to add it on. But it was voted against it by majority again, and to kind of get away my voice to be heard. So I think it's kind of the rationale behind it is that I respect the decision of the majority, and I also have the right to be heard. But the majority, get rid of my voice to be heard. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's based on democracy. So I didn't mean that every voice has to be put in the minutes, but sometimes an important voice, if the trustee find that's important to be put on that, it's not a big issue. We don't have less information on this, and there is it won't hurt if you add one line, one row of the information on that we discussed it. And there is trustee say that the national protocol of the flag should not be obeyed. And those opinions, it doesn't hurt to be put in that. And I just don't know why the majority's opinion can be, how to say that, get rid of by the majority. I just think it's not reasonable, and it's not does not have correct rationale behind it. I don't know if you understand my opinion. I mean, I respect the majority's vote, but I respect my right to be heard. Especially this is important because we got tons of complaints regarding that. And there are many people send me emails and call me regarding the national flag protocol. If we just ignore it and we didn't mention it in the minutes, they will think that we didn't really be responsible and we heard it and didn't taken care of that. So I mean that when a trustee finds something important, he or she should have the right to ask that to be put in the minutes, because you don't know how many complaints she got and how important it is. So it won't hurt, just put the information in. I'm sorry if I speak too much. Yeah.
Thank you. Could you please turn your mic off? Oh, thank you. Any further comments or questions from trustees? Trustee Sipkar?
Point of clarification, is this also a change to the bylaw or in the same way, or is this, Trustee Burgess is saying no?
Yes, it would be a change to the bylaws. Okay, so how would we, so I will put it back to trustees. So if it's not a change to the bylaws, where is that captured then? How does that get captured? It would be a procedure of the board.
I don't think it's.
Go ahead, Trustee Burgess.
I don't think there's anything in our bylaw about minutes reflecting a brief summary or clarification of the trustee's opinion voiced at the preceding meeting. I think where that is captured is in our bylaw that says we defer to Robert's rules when it isn't spelled out in our bylaw. And Robert's rules is fairly clear on what minutes are. I take the point earlier that you can get, parliamentarians in a room and they'll have differing opinions. Some will have more of their expertise on things like large organizations, conventions, societies, councils versus boards. And from an education perspective, governance things regarding to education in Ontario, there are some experts that are parliamentarians that are expert in that and capturing minutes is what I'm saying. So what I've heard is not necessarily definitive. In Roberts, it says you cover, what action is taken and what discussion is germane for the vote. So I think we have a mechanism in place, and I don't think it's a bylaw. I think what it is our rule book, which is Roberts, which captures it. So I don't think this is a bylaw change, the second part.
Okay,
I think it's
so
maybe a practice.
So I will put back out there then that we have our bylaws and we have procedures in our bylaws that outline, I mean, we just had a conversation about a special rule tonight that we used to have in the bylaws that we don't have anymore. So are we saying that there is somewhere in Robert's rules that speaks to this? And we are saying that this would be a specific procedure of our board. And in my opinion, that it needs to be captured in the bylaws. Otherwise, you're right, we defer to Robert's rules. But that's not what we're saying. We're saying we're going to do something that's specific to our board. And again, to me, that equals bylaws.
So I think that's the first thing we have to decide. So I personally think that Roberts captures it. However, if we change this, and the difference between splitting this, because it's not really clearly split, The first part of this, the original thing that was split off, was dissenting. So if I read it as a continuous sentence, I would say that the inference was the second part, that an individual trustee be allowed to request that the minutes reflect a brief summary or clarification of the trustee's opinion. I have an inference in my head by reading the first part of the what doesn't exist anymore is dissenting. So if this means that if somebody is really anxious and wants to have their voice recorded because they can anticipate it's going to be a dissenting one, and they want that on the record. Madam Chair, I want it on the record that I really strongly oppose this. I'd like my name in the record saying Trustee Burgess really opposes this because of blah, blah, blah. I think if you had consensus from the board, you couldn't probably find that out of order. But maybe you would, but I think we have something for this. I find this redundant again. I don't think we need it. I think if you really were definitive,
so we're
then
speaking
it would
to
be
whether this is,
a bylaw
whether
or not. Right,
it's a
so
bylaw change. And again, I think
so if you want to make
because
it definitive, then it
this
has
was
to be a bylaw.
Correct, because it's, and especially because it was a continuation of the original. So that is my understanding, and that's how I plan to handle it as a bylaw change. However, if there is disagreement, then there's always an avenue to challenge the chair.
Can I ask if it is for dissenting? Because I don't know. May I ask?
So I'm
Okay.
telling you that what my interpretation is and how I plan to handle it. So is there a challenge to the chair? Okay, then we will handle it. Trustee Chin.
I'm not familiar with bylaw, the detail, but from my experience, from the practice, and there is there is already found the misconduction about it, that the minority's voice is not heard, and the minority's right is was taken away by the majority. The majority's right is to have the motion.
Trustee Chin, so where I'm at now in this proceeding is that I have made a decision that this second part would be handled as a bylaw. There were some comments that maybe that's not the direction to go in, so I have opened that up to, is there a challenge to the chair that this not be treated as a change to the bylaws? Is there a challenge to
I have a challenge. Could you provide the detail of the bylaw that we should vote for? We should have the vote procedure when the majority ask for the minutes to have this
So
on.
is this a challenge to the chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Could you provide it? The
So
detail of the
we
law,
are
by law,
dealing with
yeah.
the challenge to the chair.
Yes,
So I actually don't have my my detail on the challenge to the chair.
As I know, if you think it's a
Trustee
change of
Chin,
bylaw.
Trustee
okay,
Chin, please
okay.
wait. So what I do know about a challenge to the chair is that the chair speaks first and last. I believe each trustee has an opportunity to speak only once, and there has to be a clear opposition to the manner in which the chair intends to handle the situation. And so my wording would be, once we get there, is the ruling of the chair sustained? Okay? I don't think it is. Do we have a copy of Robert's rules? Pardon me, Trustee Leclerc? Thank you. You have it, Trustee Higgison?
Yeah, so I'm mean, I pulled up the For Dummies site, but so it's an appeal from the ruling of the chair can interrupt a speaker who has the floor, needs to be seconded, is debatable unless the immediately pending question is not debatable, can't be amended, requires a majority vote to overturn the decision of the chair, and can be reconsidered.
So any comments? Okay, then I put it back out to you. Is the ruling of the chair sustained? All those in support of the chair? 1, 2, 3. Is your hand up, Trustee Sipkar? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the ruling of the chair is sustained, and we will treat this as a bylaw change. Trustee Chin, back to your motion.
To my understanding, that the majority of the trustees is their right to vote to pass the motion, but they don't have the right to ask the minority to shut up their mouths. And they have to respect the minority's opinion, and also the minorities, they have right to have their opinions to be recorded, and for transparency issue, and the people would like to know what's the point of that, and if their complaints are considered. And I think it's very important for the accountability and the responsibility of our trustees. And minorities do respect the motion, the vote of the motion, but I just don't think it's fair to get rid of their information, disappear from the minutes. And if somebody thinks it's really important, there might be some reason behind it. And in this way, the majority just think that they don't like the minority's opinion, obviously, because they didn't vote for the minority. And if they don't like it, they may just vote for not being put in the minutes. That's personality, that's understandable. So I don't think it's a reasonable way to asking the people to vote for the minority's opinion to be recorded. It's similar with asking you to shut up your mouth. That's what I think. I feel very bad at that meeting, because I do think the national protocol of flag is very, very important. If we voted not to obey on that, it should be reflected.
Trustee Chin, we're not going over the national flag protocol decision
it's an
now.
example. It's
We're
testified. It's
Point of
testified.
order.
Yeah.
Trustee Higgison.
There can't be talking over everybody, like one person at a time.
So Trustee Chin, we're not going over your vote on the national flag protocol
No,
tonight.
I'm not. I'm just.
Trustee Chin,
Okay.
excuse me, please. So we're not reviewing that tonight. Your comments need to be specific to
Okay.
the motion that you're bringing forward.
Okay, can I continue?
I understand that
Yeah.
that you are identifying that as an example of why you're bringing it forward.
And it just give the testimony, give the example of how the minority's right is taken away, and how the important issue, important complaints are ignored. And it just shows the quality of our work does not meet the requirements of the people, because they cannot see their voice heard. I just don't think it's too much difficulty to put that in the minutes. It has happened in the meeting, and if somebody really think it's important, why not reflect in the minutes? There is no way to take it away. There is no hurt to be put in the minutes, because I do respect the majority. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Higgison, and then I have Trustee Leclerc and Trustee Sipkar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, I'm wondering about, I guess my main question is around the word proceeding. So we do have a mechanism in place where if you want something recorded in the minutes of the a meeting occurring right now. If I really wanted these comments to be captured in the minutes, I could request that. I think what we're dealing with as a part of a bylaw change is that to have them voiced in the preceding meeting, which I guess this is my question on clarification. Do we not currently have that as a potential when we're looking at approval of the minutes? And do we not already have a process in place and a procedure in place that covers that, whether or not it necessitates that every time we want something recorded in the minutes of the preceding meeting, it will happen? I don't agree with that. I don't agree that every time I see something that wasn't captured appropriately in the meetings or in the minutes of the preceding meeting that I should have the ability to put it in there. I think there are ways that I can appeal to having it put in there, the minutes from the preceding meeting. I think that already exists. I think it exists for current meeting, and I think it exists for preceding meeting. So I guess I'm just wondering, if I'm asking clarification if I'm correct on that.
Trustee Chin.
Yeah, to answer that question, yeah, there is the proceeding that, but the process that we use is the ask all the trustees to vote again, and the trustee already vote to pass the motion, and they vote again to have this minority's opinion. In that, I don't think it's logical. The majority of the trustee does not have the right to vote for the minority's opinion to be taken away. So I think it's fair for the minorities to have their voice on, and it won't change the motion. Yeah, it does, but I just question the rationale undermining the procedure. I don't think it's logical. Yes, you voted for the motion to be passed, and when somebody wants their opinion to be heard, you voted not. It's not logical. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Trustee Leclerc?
So I guess what I'd like to say is that it's troubling that Trustee Cheen feels that the way she does, and that she obviously is concerned that she has reflected a minority opinion. But having served on this board for 5 years, I've learned that we're not a homogeneous group. I've been on the majority. I've been on the minority side many times. I voted with the chair. I voted against the chair. I voted with everybody else in here at some point. I voted against everybody else in here. It's not against them, but against their opinion. We're individuals that were brought in and elected as individual representatives. We each have our own individual opinion, which we're entitled to. Sometimes that brings us to the majority side. Sometimes that brings us to the minority side. When I make my decisions, I don't make them based on who's bringing the motion forward. I make them based on what my principles are and what grounds me as a person and what my ethical beliefs are. And sometimes that lands me on the side that's not the prevailing side. And then that's unfortunate, but it happens. And it's not reflected in the minutes when that happens. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. I was not successful in moving forward what I believed. I have to accept what the majority stated, and I move forward. The difficulty is that we can't always be successful at this level. And I don't think that adding a summary as to why you voted as in the dissenting side needs to be added any more than what's on the prevailing side. And I just want to go back to what Robert's rules say. Robert's rules speak specifically about recording actions, not the debate. It gives a broad overview, broad strokes of what the debate is. It's not about what each individual says. So it's not like the Supreme Court where the dissenting side provides their decision and the prevailing side gives their decision. This is a different structure. And we've worked well enough long before I got here, and I'm assuming long after I leave, that we don't need to move to a model that similar to what the Supreme Court uses.
Trustee Sipcar, and then I have Trustee Olmsted and Trustee Cheen and Trustee Hatfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've been listening to the comments, and I think the real concern is the transparency and that our minutes actually reflect the debate and what was discussed, if I'm understanding the arguments in favor of this. And I think had we have had this conversation maybe several months ago, I'd be more inclined to supporting this motion. But however, because we do have the ability to live stream meetings and we do have technology at our fingertips, and there is a mechanism for us to appeal the minutes as per Robert's Rules of Order, in addition to those technological advances, I think that this isn't. And I don't think this is necessary to be featured in our bylaws, and it doesn't, I guess, meet the threshold of something that I feel like is important enough to request a bylaw change. I think if what you're after is, or I should say if what any of us are after, which is that we make our opinion known to the public via debate, I think we have that opportunity, and I think it is captured now and recorded, and that is, I think, sufficient for that. And again, it can be appealed at the time of the approval of the minutes. So I know that, and we can employ that mechanism if we don't feel that the minutes accurately captured the debate, and that would be one way of doing it. So I don't think I'll be supporting it.
Trustee Olmsted?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concerns echo Trustee Sipcar's. I was just going to say I understand Trustee Cheen's frustrations. She's voiced these several times over the past few months. But again, we do have this wonderful use of transparency by our video feed. And if anyone does want to see a majority debate, minority debate, they can refer to the links on the website, and they can see real time as to all of our opinions. And I don't think that this particular motion necessitates a procedural bylaw change. I understand your frustration, but thanks to modern technology, anyone can watch these feeds now, and anyone can refer to past meetings for, I don't know how long they'll be up for, but your opinion will always be known from here on out.
I have Trustee Cheen.
Okay, thank you for your comments and inputs. And I do know that the live stream video is very helpful, but many people they may not have the have the ability or the interest to view because it's several hours. It's difficult. Just give them difficulty to find the information. And also, if you think we have live stream, do we still need minutes? Yes, we do need, because it can give the the main information of that. And to answer Trustee DeClaire's opinions, yes, I do. Many times I belong to the minority, but I don't really speak out every time. I just follow. But only that time I strongly against it. I strongly want it to be put because I know how important it is. I know how many people talked with me, complained with me. So that's why I think it's important to put in that. I already give the reason, give the why I put that. I didn't oppose any other my opinions to be put on that. I didn't request it. Just that time. I think it's so important, and I think you should have the trust for the individual trustees. And we have our main acknowledgement, and we have our own reasonability to see what's important. So if I think it's important to put on that, I think I should have the right. And I just question I don't talk about the trouble or difficulty to put on that. I just question the rationale and undermining the voting procedure for the majority to vote for the minority's opinion to be heard. I just question this rationale. I don't think it's reasonable. So no matter, even if it passed, I may not request in the future, but I just think there is some mistakes in the rationale to be voted for the minority's opinion to be included. And from the previous experience, it's a whole year. I didn't request the second time. I just request once. So why not put it on? I already gave important information, important complaints. It's not my own information. It's a lot of people's opinions. They feel their feelings to be heard for not being, heard in that. So why not put it in? Does it hurt a lot? For the whole year, I just request once. So I don't know what's the point of you to deny my request. Thank you.
So just to clarify, when you say you, I assume you're referring to the Board of Trustees as a whole, because I certainly don't own the minutes.
I'm not talking to you, the majority, yeah.
Thank you. Trustee Hatfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I said earlier that I've become complacent about the format of the minutes, and I'm not feeling good about that. I'm hearing the frustration from one of my colleagues about expressing minority views in our minutes, and I know that in the past we have allowed committees to submit minority reports, but we don't even give ourselves that benefit in our minutes. In my research about Robert's rules, again, I go back to the statement that the format of the minutes can vary depending on the standards established by an organization. We have basically done our minutes through establishing standards. And you may not realize this, but what I've seen happen over the years is that the minutes essentially go through the chair of the board, and we have had years where minutes were very detailed with especially when there's robust debate, where they've been very detailed in both sides of the debate. And then another group will come along with another chair, and then they decide, oh, well, we're going to get a new standard and we're going to cut back. I remember a time when there was a standard in place where anyone who made a comment was identified. So trustee so-and-so said this, trustee so-and-so said that. Then it was back to, well, a comment was made about this, a comment was made about that. So didn't go through any bylaws, didn't go through any procedures. It was just the standard of the time, and everyone just went along with it. The standard has changed many, many times. And I think what I've become complacent about is that now our minutes are very, very streamlined. The board did this vote, carried. The board did that vote, carried. Or not carried, defeated. But we don't give any other helpful information. These minutes are the record, not the live streaming. These minutes are what gets signed and filed away in the official minute book. So it's these minutes that are our official records. And I really believe that as an elected board, because I've sat on a lot of boards too, where we could care less about who said what, and we just record that a motion was carried. But we're an elected board, and I think that we have to be held to a higher standard. There doesn't seem to be a willingness to move in that direction in terms of recording the votes or allowing for minority view to be, at least given a few sentences in the minutes. And I'm not saying that this is anyone's fault. It's just the standard that we've become accustomed to, and nobody has questioned it until now. But I think that this has really opened up my thoughts anyway to my complacency, my own complacency, and I'm not comfortable with it. I'm really taken back tonight by the statement that was recently made that any trustee can request their comments to be recorded in the minutes, because I have never known that. That is something new to me tonight. I have never heard a trustee request it. Well, we had a quasi-request earlier tonight for that to happen, but I have never heard a trustee during a debate say, I want my comments recorded in the minutes and they become recorded in the minutes. I've never seen that happen. I have never known that we could even do that. But I heard it said, it was told to me tonight by trustees that we can do that. And so that opens up a whole new ballgame. That trustees can now request that their comments be recorded in the minutes. So I'm really surprised by that. That could take a lot longer than putting in the one sentence that Trustee Chin referred to. You know, just give one sentence, she said, to a minority view. Like, there has to be some fairness in what we're recording. And so again, I look and say, are we really being fair? Are we really, have we really created standards of transparency and accountability? And I'm not taking the default position that you can go look at the film at 11. I'm not taking that default position because these are the official documents. So I'm not going there. So it's just a little bit disappointing to me that that this, number one, that this debate is taking so long. I never saw that one coming, but I don't see that we're open-minded here tonight at all in looking at the standards that we've established, and to me that's just disappointing. And so now I think we have to take the routes of asking for recorded votes, we have to take the routes of requesting that our comments be recorded, which are avenues that have rarely been used, but obviously there's some frustration in the standard that we've established for our minutes, and they may not be as full as they should be in recording what happens at board meetings, and I really do think that we have a higher standard that we should be trying to achieve. So I just, these might not be the exact words that we need to get to where we want to go, but I still think that we really need to think about the standards that we've established for our minutes. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to take note of the time. We are at about 9:12, so we are crossing over into timed items, which would be trustee question period. So I'm looking for consensus that we just continue. Okay, and I'm looking for consensus that we continue through the agenda still as presented and not have to keep flipping back and forth to timed items again. Anyone opposed to doing that? Okay, thank you. I have Trustee Cook next.
I just have a question, because Trustee Hatfield mentioned that we can request that our opinions, beliefs be recorded. So does that mean that, like, do we have to ask at that meeting? Or does that mean the meeting after we can ask that, oh my gosh, like, I wanted that recorded? I just wanted some clarification around that, because, I mean, that in itself can be, yes. And then I have a quick comment.
Did you want to answer that, Trustee Burgess?
I can give some additional institutional knowledge, I suppose. It's never been encouraged to ask that something be recorded verbatim. It's never verbatim. But in the strength of debate, if somebody is really wanting to go on record, I will assure you that it's happened, and I'm thinking of one trustee in particular who, on a regular basis, would say, well, I want it clear in the minutes that I oppose this for this reason, and it would be captured. Again, not in quotes, not verbatim, but that opinion was strong and they wanted it recorded, and there was no opposition, so it got recorded. I will also say that, yes, the idea of somebody's name being attached to comments was also a past practice. The practice has evolved. I would say it's not necessarily, in my opinion, developed on the chair, but also in whatever committee and or assistant or what we agreed to at the time. So it has evolved at the time. But yes, that has been past practice, but hasn't been practiced for a long time.
Trustee Cook, you also had a question or comment?
I was just gonna say, because my concern is that if we're gonna go, like, we said something today, and then a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, we're gonna ask that it be recorded, you know, I think that could be a problem. And then my comment is, can we call for the vote?
Okay, so I believe we need a seconder to go to the vote. Trustee Sipcar, all those in support to actually call the vote at this time? 1, 2, 3. Okay, and that carries. So on the motion, all those in support of the recommendation as presented? All those in support of the recommendation as presented? Trustee Chin, I assume that you're in support?
Can I ask for recorded vote? Yes,
you
recorded
can.
vote.
Is there a seconder for a recorded vote? Trustee Hatfield, all those in support of a recorded vote? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we will have another recorded vote. We are just really setting precedents tonight, you guys. Okay, so we will record the vote. All those in support now, we're back to the main motion. All those in support of the motion as presented? So those in support are Trustee Halberstadt, Trustee Chin, and Trustee Hatfield. All those opposed? Trustee Leclerc, Trustee Cook, Trustee Sipcar, Trustee Burgess, Trustee Higgison, Trustee Olmsted, and myself, Trustee Sartori, and the motion fails. Okay, we are at reports to be received. Director Kelly, can you please speak for a while tonight?
Okay, try to lighten it up here. Let's wait for, yeah, let's talk about kids. Let's talk about the schools and fun things that are happening. Nope, no, that's not fun. That's for Superintendent Allwender. Are we good? Okay. There's been an obvious shift, I think, in the seasons, you might have noticed, since the last time we met. But here are some things that, there's some things that never change. In just a few days, we went from this to this. And of course, it was all in and around the time of our Halloween. And again, this year, art students from Sandwich Secondary School Design painted and delivered special pumpkins to the pediatric ward at Windsor Regional Hospital to brighten up the seasons for kids who don't get out. Certainly this time of year is again a serious time for reflection as well, and our schools once again observe Remembrance Day with great pride and dignity. Some students, like the group from Princess Elizabeth Public School, braved the elements and sat patiently through the ceremonies at local cenotaphs. Our next season, the giving season, is now upon us, and the signs are becoming apparent. This is a giving tree at A.V. Graham, one of the many charitable efforts of our students and staff during the holiday season. This week, we are celebrating kindness at our schools in many different ways. It is Bullying Prevention and Awareness Week in the province, and we think being kind every day will make a difference. Our first high school grade 8 information nights begin this week, and students, such as those from Riverside, have been out in schools telling their younger peers all about great things that they can do in high school. There was also an open house tonight at Leamington District Secondary School for grade 8s interested in the International Baccalaureate program, and recently teachers at MD Benny were immersed in their training for the IB Primary Years program. Students and staff from Prince Edward Public School recently went on a little shopping trip to Indigo to spend some of their Love of Reading grant that they received last year. And last week, we enjoyed the Frozen Over the Moon November Round Dance at Westgate Public School. And again, it was well attended with lots of food, company, and of course, dancing. Our land acknowledgement has taken on a physical form, and students at Westgate were involved in a project with artist Moses Lunham to depict the statement with paint on canvas, and dozens of students had a hand in this project. And this is the final product, and which will be fully mounted and secured, and that will travel from school to school within the board. I think that's very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the director? Any questions for the director? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We are now at M2, the long-term accommodation report, and we have a presentation from Superintendent Auwender.
Well, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm going to go through this kind of fast, okay? What you're going to see in here is nothing different than what is in the long-term report. Anytime you have any questions about that throughout the year, I don't know if you had a chance to get through it all. Some of the information is similar to last year. All of the numbers are updated, different, and there's new information and new potential suggestions, solutions that come through this. All right, and so our purpose is always to support student learning and achievement, and we base it on our strategic priorities. Now, we always use this demographic data with the census. This is the most recent one, and it's obviously not right up to date in 2019, but it is the last one. A couple of the areas to notice, if you look at the total population, which is the top line, and you go over to, let's say, 2011 and to 2016, there was a change. It went up about 10,500 people, so that's a good thing. For this area. However, what you're going to see on the next slide, I think, is more revealing because we look at the different subdivisions that we have in our area here. The other one, too, that I'd like to point out is the very bottom, which I found interesting the first time that I ever looked at the census, and that was the females, aged 25 to 44. That has been decreasing, and they do base projections on that because of the age group and as well as females and pregnancy. So you have your different subdivisions up there, and you can see as you look in the second column, typically you're in the negatives, which isn't a great thing. What you do see the biggest is that age 65 and over. That's the one that's growing the most, which is why we have more people now than we did back in 2011. That's great for the community, but when you're looking at school systems and kids, that's not necessarily the best column to be the one that's increasing the most. So here's our information. We still have 5-year renewal needs of $368 million. That is a lot. Average board-wide FCI is 34.1. That is still high. And our average aging infrastructure is 48 years, which is one of the highest in the province. That is all based on the 5-year school assessment cycle, which has now been completed. They're on their second cycle now, and it's completed by third-party facilitators who are 2 engineers, and they specialize in building design, construction, and building systems. Now, this is actually, this slide up here is a great, I guess, celebration for us in that before this started with the additional SCI monies, we were getting probably about $6 million per year in renewal. That didn't even come close to do what it needed to do for our buildings. Since 2015-16, you can see the numbers have significantly increased, and now up to 19-20, we're up to $131 million that has now gone into our schools, which has really helped us out. And this is just an example. Leamington High School, the kids love it. They're sitting in there, reading, having fun, eating. And then the whole school gatherings, I know they talk about it all the time where the whole community comes in. 1,000 people can fit in those stands, and it's a beautiful facility. 3 gyms there. The stage is at the front. So this one here is I guess when you're looking at sometimes as a system, we've actually, you're going to see as we go through this, some real nice improvements over the past number of years. The on-the-ground capacity, the first one there for elementary, is 27,100. That is the permanent structures that kids have spaces in. That does not count portables or porta-packs. So it's the permanent structure. Elementary has 25,000 students, and then when you look at the total capacity there, that's the on the ground, the portables, and the porta-pack that go into that one. However, the utilization rate is just the number of students divided by the on-the-ground capacity. They don't count the temporary spaces. And our empty spaces is 2,099. So that is actually pretty good. That was a lot higher, if you can remember, 3, 4, 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. Same with secondary. On the ground is over 14,000. You've got almost 12,000 students. There's only 6 portables in secondary. You have 2 at Sandwich and 4 at Massey. The total capacity is 14,421, and then you have almost 2,500 empty spaces. Utilization rate there is 82.8%. I started to put this up about 5 years ago, and it's really interesting because I look back, and we are now down to 4,500 empty spaces. You can see that where I just equate it to 2 General Amhersts and 4 Anderton schools. 5 years ago, there was 6 high schools and there was 10 elementary schools. So it's great to see this chart. And then you're going to see some really nice data in a few slides. This is some of the science labs that used to exist. That I put this picture up because, quite frankly, students shouldn't have to work in that kind of a atmosphere or environment. So here's a really neat slide. When we get the new builds, because what we have on the slides previously did not count our 6 new builds that are coming up. So that's going to significantly reduce the empty space. So we're going to go from 4,551, and we're going to have a little bit over 1,600 fewer spaces. So our total as a system is going to actually be below 3,000, which is amazing. And that's only 2 General Amhersts and 2 Andertons. And here again, here's what science labs should look like. This is the chart that we use. We want all our schools down in the right low quadrant. We don't want any up in the pink one. And this is your facility condition index versus the utilization, how full the schools are. This was back in 2013, and I like to put this up because it's a comparison. So you can see a shift down to the lower quadrant there. And this here, though, and I guess if you can see it, I meant to circle them and I didn't get it circled. On this, what I did, though, is I left, if you can see the red right here, Giles, Kingsville, Eastwood, Kingsville Public, Parkview, General Amherst, Western, Jack Minor, it's hard to get the, Jack Minor is just a little bit over there. Prince Andrew is on the far right, right along the 60% line, and Diamigle is just in front of it. When you take all of those out, the FCI and the average age of our schools is going to be significantly lower than that initial page that I showed you, because those are all high. Giles is one of the worst in the province, if not the worst. Again, Essex Library, beautiful library. Students always talk about how great it is. Tecumseh Vista, beautiful school, JK to 12. Cafeteria is ahead there in the windows. Offices are in the front there. Entrance there. And so in the long-term plan, you have the family of schools profile. So each family of schools has the boundaries. It has the total enrollment versus capacity in a bar graph. It has your enrollment summary. It has your facility utilization. And the utilization is just the number of students divided by the on-the-ground capacity. And that's for each individual school. And then the narrative that's in each one of the family of schools talks about potential development. It talks about the history of the individual schools. It talks about the FCI, renewal, empty space, boundary or adjustment programs that may have happened or possibly could be a solution. You have your individual elementary school profile for each school. And then you have a picture of each school. You have the school profile information, so that talks about daycare, whether it's dual track, whether it's JK to 8, how many portables there are, the renewal costs, closest school, the footprint of the school as well. Again, the enrollment versus capacity, the catchment area. And it's the exact same for the high school. picture with the school profile information. It has the individual secondary school profile. And then the school enrollment capacity as well as the catchment area. And so then I know a number of years back, French immersion was asked to have a look at, so that's been included in this and has been for a few years now. It looks at the trends both in elementary and secondary. It looks at possibilities for sites, possible boundary adjustments that may happen, models of delivery, and the boundaries for both elementary and secondary. The other is that I just put on there, there's approximately 4,800 students in elementary, which is about 19%, and then there's about 600 in secondary, which is about, 5%. Now, over the last 10 or 15 years, our board has decreased in enrollment. However, the French immersion has more than doubled, I think in about a 10-year period. And so these charts are included for the immersion, and what this does is it shows where the number of students are coming from the English catchment area. So I almost call it the feeder area to the French immersion. And so when you look at this particular one, I just picked Forest Glade. If those 11 students that are with Roseville, if they don't take French immersion, then they'll be in Roseville School doing English. Same thing with Eastwood, same thing with Parkview. And then you can see the Forest Glade boundary. And this is actually a boundary that was part of Tecumseh Vista about, I think it was about 9 years ago now, but it's now, because Vista was getting so big, it ended up shifting over to Forest Glade. It gives each individual school with the enrollment, the English, French, and then the percentage of French that are in them. And the same for the secondary, French, English, and then the percent of French immersion. There's a whole piece on partnerships that we talked about in there, going back to about 2016, 17 or so, that came out from the ministry, so we made sure that was in there. And I mean, the biggest partnership we have is with the child care, the early on. Almost every one of our schools has that, and we have the before and after school as well. Again, beautiful Leamington High School at night. And then this is really exciting too. This is about $135 million that's coming into our system with schools that are going to be built. And I've mentioned it earlier on the one FCI versus utilization. So you can see 15.5, 28 million, 45 million, and I'm just giving approximate, not going into the nitty-gritty of it. And then these are the current priorities that we just submitted to the ministry, hopefully to get some of these. And the Forest Glade PLC together on the same site, or a new school with Lakeshore Bell River, same thing with Westgate Northwood. Talbot Trail has an addition that we're put in for, Gosfield, because of the Porta-Pack that's there. That's the last one that we're going to have. And MD Benny with the IB program growing the last couple of years, they've got about 5 portables now. And then Marlborough, an older building, high FCI, and we'd love to get a brand new building on that site. And then just again, the Herman Elementary Gym, beautiful gym. They run a ton of tournaments in there. And I know the high school students are always trying to use it. So now I open it up to questions. I tried to get that as fast as possible.
Okay, questions from trustees? Trustee Hatfield.
I just have a quick question about French immersion. You broke out each school into dual track and single track. So my question is, some of the schools that only recently introduced French immersion, so that they only have, a few grades, are they still going to be dual track when all the grades get in, or single?
But they most likely will still be dual. I mean, if you're looking, say, 20 years down the road and everybody decides to just do French immersion and not English anymore, then it would probably become just an immersion school. But if we can use Forest Glade as an example, they still have a grade and a half of English and a grade and a half to 2 grades of French. And that's all the way up to are they grade 5 now or 4? It's either grade 4 or 5.
Yeah, it's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Trustee Halberstadt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Superintendent. I'm just wondering where is the ministry with regard to the moratorium that was exercised, I guess, from the old government, the last government before this one. I know this government was saying they were looking at it, but they've been looking at it a long time. Has anything come down the chute that I haven't heard about?
No, not a word.
Okay, so basically,
And I'm glad.
you're glad. So basically, we're frozen as far as, some of these consolidations that you're talking about, the possibilities. So we're frozen until something can happen about how they deal with new parks.
Well, accommodation reviews are off the table right now, and I don't believe Director Kelly is interested in that right now. So there's probably going to be some program and boundary adjustments that have to happen with some schools. But as far as the accommodation reviews go, that's not anywhere in the near future.
On that? Okay. Trustee Sipcar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Superintendent Auender. I think I've raised this before, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So when you record on-the-ground capacity, it does not include portables.
Correct.
And so it also doesn't include other spaces in the school that are potentially utilized for additional resources and different programs. Is that also correct? I'm thinking of schools like Queen Victoria, that's at an 80%, but yet but actually most of the classrooms are being used. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, somebody was coughing. I didn't hear.
That's okay. So I'm thinking of schools like Queen Victoria, where in the report it reads 80%. I forget what the actual term is, FCI. Is that, or sorry, not FCI, on the ground capacity. So that means 80% of the school is being used.
Right.
That's correct. However, when we talk about Queen Victoria, I know that there's no actual classrooms left, like there's no actual space, but it still records at 80%. Am I accurate in my thinking on that one in particular?
Yeah, and so what happens is a lot of our schools are like that, and the reason is because there's specialized classes that may not have that 23-to-1 ratio, and so you might only have 6 children in a gains classroom, and so that lowers the capacity to some extent. There's LST rooms. You may have classrooms in primary that only have 14 students. And so because of some of those specialized classes, it ends up where the schools are full, but the actual percentages, as far as the utilization rates go, are not at the 100%.
And so my question then is, how do we accurately track how the school is being used? Because when I look at the numbers for Prince Edward and Queen Victoria, for example, they're both at around 80% respectively. And then on page 44, I noticed that it says an accommodation review with the schools in the surrounding area could be a possibility, particularly Prince Edward and Queen Victoria, because their rate shows below 85%. But actually, that's not true in practice of the school's utilization. And so I wonder why there is that discrepancy in our board, and is that the same for all boards across the province? And if there's anything that we could do to accurately report those numbers, because it seems like they are being used, right? They're almost full. They're just not being used in the way that the ministry wants us to report that they're being used.
Right, and the ministry has that ratio for the classrooms, and then when it comes to class sizes with whatever comes out of collective agreements, we don't control that. And so it's going to be, like Prince Edward has a portable, and yet it's at 80, whatever it is, 80-something%. So we understand that, and we know that when you have the specialized classes that are actually lower than what you can have in there, it's not going to be full all the time.
So how do we account for that in our plan? Because if we know that those schools are almost full, then why would we be wanting to replace them with that if we know that they're actually being, let's say, well used? I don't know what the correct term is, but it's just we're not able to report them well.
Why would we want to replace them?
Well, it says on page 44 that it would be potentially to consolidate those schools because they're at a below capacity, but really that's not what's happening. Do you get what I'm saying? There's like a discrepancy in what we're reporting and what's actually happening.
Yeah, so with those particular schools, it's more about the age of the building than it is the capacity of it. And with that, it's purely a suggestion. It's nothing. It was something that we were going to do a few years back because they were significantly below capacity. But over the past 30 months or so, we've had a huge influx of newcomers, and as a result, it's a great thing because now both schools are very full. And so right now, those two schools, as far as an accommodation were to go, wouldn't work by themselves together because the school would be too big.
Further questions from trustees? Trustee Hatfield? Sorry.
Thank you. So I want to thank you for including the portable allocation report in this plan. So I was looking at the schools that had a fairly large number of portables and was matching it up with our capital plan that we also received tonight, which I thought was helpful. But like, at what point do we panic that we have too many portables? Like, because I'm not seeing that in this report, that, like, it's time to do something.
Well, it's a good question. So it's sort of one of those things for a school board. It's a good problem to have, and I say that because often when you have portables like that, that will lend for the ministry to give you monies to either put an addition on or a new school. That's typically how it's looked at, and it seems as though based on the new criteria that they have for the capital priorities, it may be going back to that way. And so, you know, as far as the development goes, we can only get the monies we can from the ministry. And then when it comes to that, then boundary adjustments have to happen.
Sorry, supplementary. So is there a certain critical point where, like to me, there's a big difference between having 3 portables and having 11 portables. And it just, that bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
I have a school with 11 portables and I don't see anything happening there to change that.
Okay, which one are you referring to?
Bellwood.
So Bellwood, we just did the boundary change on. And so every year, they're most likely going to use 1 to 2 portables because the kids are now going to Central. So they were at 12 last year, and they're down to 11, and they could have actually been at 10.
Okay. All right. And so when, if the capital funding gets approved, then this would all change again? Or these schools would still end up with the portables?
Well,
For example, number 2 on the list was the Northwood Westgate scenario that has like 18 portables between the 2 of them.
And so the priority that we submitted, I think, was for about a 500-student school that would be somewhere in between those 2, which would then accommodate basically the portables
So
into the
bring
1
in
school.
The portables.
Right.
That's kind of going back to Trustee Sipkar's point, is that it just skews everything when you don't take into account the portables. But anyway, I'm glad the report's here, and I hope it's going to be included every year with the report.
Sure thing.
Yeah, thank you.
I have Trustee Sipkar next, unless there's somebody that has their first question. Trustee Cheen, and then I have Trustee Sipkar and Trustee Halberstadt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I cannot recall which page. And regarding the, when you forecast the future capital and number, and I know it's very difficult now because there is a lot of change on the number every year, and I'm just wondering, when you forecast the capital amount and capital, am I correct to say? Capital
Do you mean
amount.
capital priorities? Is that what you're
Capital.
referring?
For number, no, for the number of the people, is it? Capital, sorry, the people.
Capacity.
Oh, capacity?
And the number of the people moved in and in this area, and
Projections?
yeah. Anyway, project the amount of the people in this area, and because it affected how many students you will have in the next couple of years, and have you considered the political issue? Because I know the different party, they have different immigration policy, and for the conservative and for the conservative and liberals, yeah, and they have different, very different policy of accepting immigrants. And I know the liberals now is a minority government, and there is a great chance for them that we will have another election within 2 years. And in this way, if we change the government, then the whole situation will change, and the number of the people moved in will be very different. Have you considered all these factors when you foresee the future amount of change? Sorry. Thank you.
Well, it's pretty difficult to predict that. So I can't say that we can necessarily put that into our projections, but what we do is try to give the best data with the information that we have right now. Because predicting who's going to be in government 2 years from now, I don't know that. So we just have to go by the trends and patterns that are happening right now, and we look at the past 5 years to see how that's gone.
Thank you. Is that possible to make make up a plan? I mean, foresee there is two different, after 2 years, if government change, we may have another plan. And in this way, we may, kind of not, need so many portables to accommodate the the change. You know what I mean? Yeah, the makeup plan.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't predict who's going to become the party in charge. So I won't know that until it happens. And then we'll plan based on what their policies are.
Okay, I think the possibility of change it's not difficult to foresee. And just two options, and we may just have two plans for that. You know what I mean? And so we will be more ready in the future to accommodate the change.
Yeah, I wouldn't be making up two plans based on political parties. Okay. And I'll state too that as a board, when you look at other schools and systems across the province, we actually don't have very many portables compared to them. There's many schools in Toronto, for example, that have 28, 38 portables on their site. There's schools in Lambton, Kent that have that. There's schools in the London area. So we, as a board, we actually don't have a lot in comparison to the others.
Trustee Burgess, you had a point of clarification.
Just a point of clarification that this is an annual report. Yes, it is. And that when new information, new policies, new directions from governments come, and they do, GSNs are only for a year. They keep telling us they're only for a year. There's nothing that really lives on and on, and they have to be renewed. So provincially and federally, I think that if really significant immigration policies changed for the country, you would have given a relevant long-term accommodation plan, and within that next year, you would revise it with the new information if those policies changed in your predictions, for example, accepting newcomers.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened.
So you would have adequate time to give a long-term accommodation plan within that year. You wouldn't, because those policies don't get implemented and the gates don't just close immediately, and they don't, kids don't stop coming to school, et cetera. It takes a little while, and certainly a year would be enough to adjust your sales.
Correct.
Thank you. Trustee Sipkar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about priorities. In that, so you noted that schools like Prince Edward and Queen Victoria have high renewal costs, and that's partially why they're being looked at in the past, and still moving forward, they still have those same high renewal costs. And I wondered, on a more, like a higher level, how do we set those priorities of where we spend both the SEI and the renewal funds? And then the second part to that question is, do trustees have a role in setting those priorities? And the third part, I guess, would be, does that fall under our strategic plan if we so choose to put that information in there?
Director Kelly?
The first thing is high and urgent needs. I mean, there's some things that just need to be done, roofs, boilers. I'm going to look to Juliana, but I'm sure that that's always the top priority, and then those are strategized below that. Generally, we look at the school condition index where the highest needs are and prioritize there. We have done workshops to present ideas to trustees on the needs, but generally those decisions are made by professionals who work in that area and under the leadership of Ms. Hitchcliffe. So you may want to speak to that further.
You did a pretty good job yourself. I don't have much else to say. That's the gist of it. The ministry has gone through our schools 3 times now. We have a fairly good basis of high and urgent needs and all our needs. We review every year, we review the high and urgent needs. We pull them out of the database, okay? And the trouble is where you get like 21 million in a year for school condition. School condition has to be used on those renewal needs that have been identified. But when you've got like 50 million in needs, that's where a bit of the give and take goes. So we focus on building envelope because we need to make sure our schools are dry. We focus on heating systems to make sure that kids are warm. We focus on safety issues, fire alarm, security, PA. That in the last 5 years has been our focus. Now, because we've kind of hit a majority of the high and urgent, we're still doing millions in electrical upgrades and fire alarms, et cetera. But now we're able to strategically start looking at things like windows, which we never replace, and because we've never had the money to do them. So you'll see new windows at Marlborough, much to their content. New windows at Riverside. You'll see new windows at Bell River because the windows are hardly staying in because of, if you touch them, they'll fall out. So those are going to be done. We also now have the ability for the first time in my career here to look at buildings such as Kennedy, where, we just started touching the front of that school and it just fell apart. So we are able to finally, we couldn't keep paint in the stairwells because of the water infiltration in the school. So we can finally have some significant money towards those. We would never have been able to do that without school condition. Never. It would have just continued to, just keep painting the flaking paint. So that's where we focus all our money. We do it strategically. We work with our maintenance department to see where they've had issues. We know our priorities now. We have, for example, washroom assessments that prioritized all the washrooms in our system. Brad right now is going through with a consultant to do all our window assessments so we know exactly which windows have to be done. We've gone through all our asphalt to say, here's the priorities based on a professional's opinion. So we've done all that work. We did all the air handlers, so we've started going through them. So we've done all the prioritization, and we try to piece a portion of the money to each of those critical areas. There's no usually left. But what that does a little bit is it frees a little bit of renewal to be able to do improvements. We did the Walkerville Steps program the year before. We did the Massey Steps program, which was in dire need of upgrades. We've finished finally, going to finish the last science lab upgrade based on a report that was done over 10 years ago saying here's our critical needs in science. And we're doing the last one, Sandwich Secondary, this coming year. We're doing the Sandwich Secondary Steps this coming year. So freeing up a little bit of the renewal has allowed us now to go forward and actually do some impact on program, which is amazing.
So was it accurate then, or do we have like a list of total renewal costs? And I know that we're talking about accommodations, but I guess I wonder how we view accommodations and in light of our the condition of our facilities and how those two blend together, and wondering if we have a total cost and how that factors into how we see that school long-term. If we make certain priorities based on if we know the school is going to be continuing or not, like that kind of thing. So I guess the question there is, do we have a total priorities list and like a total cost, and does that inform our accommodations?
Well, I'll answer a piece to that, and then you can answer the next part. We were, I think we were looking at schools that we made. Are you talking about accommodation reviews? Is it? Okay. So if we were going to think about going into a school to do something like that, whether there was closures or consolidations, whatever it might have been, we thought it wasn't really fiscally responsible to close a school, but put millions of dollars into it. So we held off a little bit there. We're at a point now where we're not doing any school closures, and they are 90 plus years old. They need the work. And we've got a little bit of money now, as Juliana said. So now there's being money put into those older schools because we can't have water running into them. And Julie, you want to finish off?
Those numbers that you see in there, the renewal needs, the high and urgent needs, are accurate. They are the latest and the greatest based on the reports that we have. So 368 million is our renewal needs for the next 5 years. I don't put that number in. The Ministry of Education puts those numbers in based on experts coming in and assessing every single building. If you look at the list of school condition, we are one of the, on a per capita or per size basis, we're one of the higher schools because we take the time to make sure that the ministry assessors see every single problem so that we make sure that we get the biggest chunk of the money. And it has, when this money first came out in 2003, it actually saved us from losing schools because we spent it all on heating systems because there were so many to the point of failure. And so it has saved us, and I am thankful for the ministry for going through this process.
Trustee Halberstadt?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Thanks first to administration for putting together this capital priority list that to me it's very informative, one-stop shopping or one-stop information.
So we're at M2, long-term accommodation report, the capital priorities list.
That's what I'm getting to.
But we're not at M3 yet. So can you save your question for when we get to M3, which is the capital priorities list?
I was just thanking administration.
We're at.
Is that so unusual?
I guess that means I'm done. See you later, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
No, I did want to ask about the condition of Walkerville. You mentioned, Madam Hinchcliffe, the other schools, and they were mentioned. Have we ever thought about a replacement, a new build for Walkerville?
Have we thought of it? Yes. Have we gone there? No. It would be a very difficult. I'll be honest, politically, and it's a heritage building as well. So I wouldn't even entertain it.
At some point, and probably get there, we'll all be gone by then. But anyway, the other question was partnerships, which is at the back of the plan. The October of 2016, the government of the day, which was the old government, announced funding for community hubs. And I'm just wondering, is there any money left in that pot, or how do you access that pot for maybe if you want to improve a stadium or something like that?
That program actually ended on August 31st of 2019. So, and there's been no announcements about any future funding related to that.
So that doesn't help. We're doing nothing from there. Thank you.
Any further questions on the long-term accommodation report? Thank you, Superintendent.
Before I sit
Yes.
down, you have to acknowledge Julie and Brad. The facilities department does a ton of work. The senior team is incredible. They help me a lot. And then especially the rock star sitting in the middle there. Christine Breshammer.
Thank you, everyone. Definitely a team effort. We are now at M3, capital priority list. This is an enclosure. I don't think there was intended to be any. Did you have some comments about it that you'd like to make? Thank you.
Just very briefly, we're providing the report that the trustees requested at the October 15th meeting with a history of the 5 years of the capital priority projects that went forward to the ministry and the rationale for that. Just a caution that the ministry's requests for capital priorities, they change year over year, so you just have to take that, in light when you're reading the information. And I did want to mention, because we didn't properly introduce Brad Giori, who's with us this evening. He is the coordinator of capital projects, and he replaced Juliana when she became manager of facility services. So I wanted to recognize and thank him for being here tonight.
Welcome and thank you. Thank you. Any questions on the capital priority lists? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Trustee Chin?
Yeah. And I appreciate that you provide the priority history. And my question is that we have several years priority list, but it didn't mention which one has been achieved, which plan. And for example, some get the rank, and the second year still rank a higher list. But I don't know which one has been finished and which one is still continuing on that. So is that information possible to put on in the list?
Is that something that can be brought forward, Superintendent Armstrong?
Yes, certainly, we can provide that information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Anything further from trustees on that? Okay. And we are now at the annual report to the Board of Trustees for the year ended August 31st, 2019. Was there someone going to speak to that? Trustee Hatfield.
I feel like I've done these about 6 times over the past 2 days, but I have. So go back to that blue page, and that's a report that's required to go into the ministry from the audit committee, saying that we completed internal audits and reports. It's just information report for the ministry. That's about all I have on that. It's pretty straightforward.
Any questions from trustees? Okay, seeing none. Okay, we are now at at M5, Statement of Revenues and Expenditures for the Greater Essex County District School Board, Ontario Youth Apprentice, Ontario Youth Apprentice, and it's getting late, so everybody's voices are probably, Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program for the year ended August 31st, 2019. So, also you, okay, you are up again, Trustee Hadfield.
So from the audit committee, the same package, it's about the last 12 pages. We're required to submit financial reports on all our individual programs outside of our regular stuff. So this is the OYAP report, financial report. That was received by the audit committee and being presented to the board. The total amount of funds, I think, in this program that's fully funded, I think is about $174,000 in that range. Yeah, so that's what this last report is. Okay. And there were no unusual findings when the program was reviewed. It's pretty straightforward.
Any questions from trustees? Okay, no questions on that. We are now at M6, the report of the OPSPA Director / Delegate. Trustee Burgess?
I will defer to Trustee Sipcar, as she has provided written notes from the recent OPSPA Western Regional meeting, which she attended on my behalf while I attended another conference, and she can let you know about the upcoming Board of Directors meeting and Advocacy Day.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to take too much time. I'll just direct your attention to the written report. I had the opportunity to attend the Western Regional meeting, and there was, the first half was a professional development workshop on board self-assessment and how we function as a board, which was interesting in light of our long discussion tonight. I do have resources if anyone is interested, and I actually think that it would be really beneficial for us outside of a Tuesday night board meeting to undertake some of these self-assessment tools. And so, but I think we should wait till after December and maybe into the organizational meeting into the new year. So if you're curious about those, I have the package here that I received, and I'm happy to share. I think I outlined some of the issues that were discussed. And then the second part of the regional meeting, we really just discussed the GSN questions that were put out ahead of time. And you'll note in the package that these were actually submitted by Trustee Burgess and reflective of where our board was at, and then how we could essentially advocate for those things to the ministry. This upcoming week, actually on Monday, there is going to be an advocacy day at Queen's Park, and I am attending as the alternate as Trustee Burgess is unable to attend. And so I was just reading over the agenda this weekend and the questions that will be present, and we have the opportunity to meet with MPPs and members of the government to discuss our concerns. And so if you have any questions or have any input, please send it my way. I welcome it, and I'd be happy to carry some of those issues, concerns, messages forward. The only other thing I'll note is that the Public Education Symposium is coming up in January, which I know some of you were speaking about already, and I think registration and hotels are underway, and so just making note, because I think they're selling out quickly. So, and I'll entertain any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions for Trustee Sipkar? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, we are now at M7, and this will actually be my last chair's report for this organization. A couple of things that that I actually want to go to now, as I missed our land acknowledgement when we first began the meeting, and it is something that I would like to read. We acknowledge that we are on land surrounded by water, originally inhabited by indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenni Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi, and Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And I also wanted to recognize this gorgeous framed, thank you so much, not Trustee Howitt, Superintendent Howitt. It's getting late and I'm getting over a cold. So that's my excuse. It's absolutely beautiful, and every trustee did receive one tonight. Very appreciative. So for my last chair's report, I would like to report that it's been an absolute pleasure to serve. I'm so proud to be a part of this new board, which this past year has enacted live streaming of our public meetings, an active transportation committee, reducing plastics. We visited our breakfast programs recently, and we've really advanced our FNMI strategy, and so much more. I am truly GECDSB proud. I would like to extend my gratefulness to all of it administration. Again, it's been a pleasure to work with all of you this year. And I will say, in particular, Ms. LaBeouf and Director Kelly, and I thank you for all of your support to, well, I'm going to get emotional, as you know I do, to Vice Chair Burgess and I over the past year, and to the entire board. Your jobs aren't easy, And I will extend all of our gratefulness and gratitude. And I think everyone would agree. So thank you. Thank you so much. And that ends my chair's report. Did anyone have any questions for me? Okay. Seeing none. We are now at trustee question period. Are there any questions? Trustee Cook.
I have a quick question. Maybe I shouldn't use that word because nothing seems quick around here. So I just have a question regarding the public consultations and the time, because there's one at Parkview and Eastwood, but it's at 3:45. And I mean, not only is it inconvenient for me, but more than that, it's inconvenient for the public due to the fact kids are coming home from school, parents, guardians are still at work. I'm just wondering if that's the time that's usually picked, or is there other times that we can look at?
Could speak to that, Superintendent
We
Hester?
can certainly look at other times. I want to say that we did it at around that time at Giles, maybe 4 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, and we had a pretty good turnout there. But, I mean, different times, yes, we can look at different times.
Do you have a follow-up question? Okay. Okay. Any more trustee, anything else for trustee question period? Trustee Jane?
When does the policy committee meet?
The policy committee will be meeting next. Trustee Sipcar?
December 2nd at 3 p.m.
Any further questions from trustees? Okay, we are at notices of motion. Any notices of motion for tonight, Trustee Cook?
So this is my notice of motion. Public consultations regarding new builds, add-ons take place in the early evening to accommodate parents, guardians, and encourage participation from the community.
Okay, thank you. And you'll provide that wording to Ms. LaBeouf?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further notices of motion tonight? Okay, seeing none, we are at announcements. Any announcements tonight? Trustee Leclerc.
So I had the pleasure on November 11th of participating in the Remembrance Day ceremony at the City of Windsor Cenotaph as a member of the organization I work for during the day. And I wanted to thank the members of the board and the students that weathered a very cold and snowy day. And I just wanted to say thanks to the trustees that attended. I did see Sarah and, Trustee Sibkar and Trustee Cook there. And I thank them. There may have been others there as well that I didn't get to see. Yeah, and there's other municipalities, but I was in the City of Windsor. So to those that took the time to go to a Remembrance Day ceremony, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Any further announcements? Trustee Cook, can you turn your mic off, please? Thank you. Any further announcements? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.